Back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, a very good morning to you. It is Wednesday the 16th. It's Tuesday. Isn't it Tuesday?
It is.
Actually,
we did a test.
I practiced this earlier just because they wanted us to test the microphones. I'm going to show you how the sausage is made. And I got the date correct and I got the day of the week correct. And then come the real thing, I fluff my lines. Anyway, Shane is here, Colm is here. What a great start to this morning's show.
Yeah, we tried. Good morning, how are things?
Yeah, very good. I arrived in about 8:15 last night to sit down to watch the football, and I was like, this is going to be crap. And then checked my Twitter, and it was aflame with the VAR audio. I was like, so I rewound and watched that, and then caught up with the goals and missed nothing in the football. But the VAR stuff, it's like they're doing it's almost like it's the GAA. They're doing everything they can not to rip anything off from another sport for fear of being seen to rip something off from another sport. But basically, they've invented ref mic from rugby. They've invented ref mic from rugby, and they're like, wow, this is unbelievable. And it actually was unbelievable. It was brilliant to see. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but they had Howard Webb on, who was very impressive.
Yeah, really good.
Like a really, really impressive character who was more than happy to listen to the stuff from either side of him and seemed to have a bit of authority over the two pundits who were like...
A little bit afraid of him.
It felt a little bit like they were in the presence of one of their former managers. But they went through a series of contentious decisions over the course of the season, and it completely humanised the referees. It explained that there's essentially two people in VAR working at the same time on stuff, that the communication is excellent. There's this kind of constant panting in the background, which is the tired referee, which would suggest that they all need to do a little bit of fitness work, or actually it's a much harder job than we think. I'm in the second camp,
I think, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think it's basically, if they just had that feed, and there's no reason why they couldn't have the feed, because they had the feed in rugby, then all this would go away. Everything would just go away.
Football has a huge problem with dissent and disrespect by players towards referees.
Again,
and this would, I think, help solve that huge
10-game ban for saying the stuff that they actually say.
It's awful. They get away with murder, these players, like, and you go through the ages, like, remember the old Manchester United teams, they were brutal for it, like the famous game against Middlesbrough 99 when Roy Keane and Yap Stam and the lads chased down the ref, like literally chased them around the pitch, right up to the modern day.
It's funny because this is actually have a piece with the BBC commentary at the weekend. They had Maurice Deegan, they introduced him before the match, and they went to him across the course of the game, and there was back and forth, Morris talking about Philly McMahon. And it was the same with Howard Webb last night, talking about Gary Neville. Yeah, orchestrated campaigns by players to overturn decisions like in your day, Gary. Oh, yeah, fair point. Because Neville was like, do you not just have to listen to the player when they're telling you something? They're like, well, because then you'll just lie to me, Gary, the way you would have done.
I think it'll create more empathy for referees and linesmen. Like there was one occasion where there was an offside that was absolutely marginal, and the VAR said straight away, this is going to be a tight one. And after it was given as onside and the goal was the Newcastle goal, and the linesman starts apologising.
Joe Linton.
Sorry lads.
Yeah.
It's like you're really apologising for something that the human eye could probably barely just pick up.
Yeah, well, he actually did the right thing. I think it's one of those reflex sorries as opposed to Neville picked up on that. I'm like, I mean, people have conversations.
True.
It may well just be a conversational tick, but really, like, I still have significant doubts about when the ball is kicked. Like, is the ball kicked the moment that the contact is made with the ball? Is the ball kicked finally when the foot leaves the ball and is no longer in contact with each other? They don't actually focus on that. And we could see that what they're focused on is like the line of the last defender and the line of the foremost attacking player, but they don't do any focus on the precise second. And actually TV isn't high def enough to be able to tell you when the ball leaves the foot. So all of this, I think, is kind of a little bit of bullshit. But anyway, it's our current best bullshit.
They've altered the body position since the COVID season when there was goals being ruled out. Parts of the body that had nothing to do with goals scored. I think Sadio Mane got done really badly with his arm, I think, and they changed that since. But it does seem when they were going through like the audio of a typical decision like they did last night on Monday Night Football.
Yeah,
it's like it does all seem kind of overly complicated. It's like it kind of does take the joy out of everything. It's like listening to recordings of like in a NASA station.
I know.
Yeah, but
space
mission control.
It's real like I know it's ultimately for the benefit of the game and more correct decisions are being made. But I was like, geez, you'd forget why we were all here in the first place. Like this is supposed to be enjoyable.
The most
but
exciting.
You have these guys like so stressed out for. Oh my god, can you just draw that line just to the far guy there, please? Just give me a sec, please. I'll be done in 2 seconds. Like this is supposed to be escapism. Ultimately,
well, you're Simon Jordan. They're supposed to get it right. I mean, sorry, if it sounds like it's NASA, that's literally the most impressive stuff that human beings have ever done is putting, humans, other humans.
The thought they put into this is it's very commendable.
And also it's going to get faster and quicker.
But I really do think they should be playing this all the time, and they should definitely mic up the refs so that you can hear the player-ref interaction. And I guarantee overnight players will be like, I better watch them saying here.
Just cut it.
Commercial deals are gone.
Cut to it live.
Find out what I'm like.
not after the game as well. Like, at the end of the game, let's see this. Just do it live. It's a really obvious thing.
It's the one thing I really, really love rugby for is the relationship between players and refs.
And one other thing about rugby, they've started to talk over the ref mic way more now than they used to. Just shut up and let us hear what the referee is saying, and then he's part of your commentary team.
Yeah, literally.
A little bit of.
Well, it's like you say, it takes the fun out of sport, but it
doesn't.
No, it doesn't. The Kai Havertz one, particularly, the referee is behind.
It adds this extra layer of tension where we find out whether or not something actually happened.
No, but when every goal is scored now, there's a split second delay. You were like, not like when you were at Old Trafford at the weekend.
Yeah, you're waiting.
Did you feel that?
Those 2 goals are fairly clear cut, I think.
Then you're still.
But even then,
they're going to probably go back to this. Was there a VAR decision?
No.
You didn't have to wait for anything.
No VAR decisions.
Yeah, I was at Spurs Wolves at the start of the season. There was none either. But I would like to hear what the user experience is like in the stadium. Oh
yeah, okay. It's ruined in the game except the 2 games that we were at.
But to your end,
I never said that once. I'm just saying it comes across so serious.
It's supposed to be escapism.
Your point, Ger, about
I know it's people's livelihoods. I understand that, but it's the entertainment industry, baby.
Yeah,
and it doesn't sound very entertaining. These people are having heart attacks. Like
the year is 2023. That your point, Ger, about the moment that the ball is actually kicked. Why don't we have sensors on every single player's foot? I know obviously the ball could be knee forward or whatever, but at least that would stamp it. Well, in 50 years' time, there's going to be something crazy like that. Centres in boots or something.
Going to have so many rules that be like, say, what are we doing here again?
Yeah.
But like again, going back to rugby, right? And see, the thing is, it's such a different game, obviously, because there's so many more decisions happening in football than rugby. You can almost predict what's about to happen in rugby from the referee's perspective. Oftentimes in football, like you could have a split second, like someone's being fouled, or there's a decision to be made. But when a referee makes a call in rugby, 9 times out of 10. Player would be like, fine, I don't agree with it, but whatever, and walks away.
Yeah,
the game would be so much better off. I cannot stand. It's my biggest pet peeve is the way footballers treat referees.
Well, and I think this would all help. I don't think it's going to fix it. I think that there's a cultural issue from parents on sidelines screaming at referees in underage sport, and you can see it, and that comes from pent up, vicarious living, failed athletes. Anyway, that's a tangent. Should bring in the mics for goods. It's Tom Flynn. Mic up the manager as well. It'll be interesting to hear. Maybe not.
No.
No need to be miking officials up. Just another reason for people to be moaning. Lead the nonsense to the rugby, says Brian. And then Bobby Dwyer was anybody else trying to work out their abbreviations? PPV. What was the or APP? What was it? Was it attacking play? It was like the start of the play. They seem to be. Needs to be ref mic just like in rugby. Would be a massive improvement for the breaks in play. John Dooley says, anybody hear the Stormers coach in Kickoff's interview yesterday trying to explain the video? I didn't hear it, actually. I didn't see that. So John, in the comments, maybe you would inform us about, we were just happy we didn't have to get on a plane again because we like the environment and it's good to not burn the planet. Something like that.
That sounds about right. Very good point from Shane in the comments this morning. They cherry picked the footage last night. Nobody complained about the Havertz decision. Why not show a major decision they got wrong? They did show
the decision they got wrong. The last one they showed was one that they got wrong where they hadn't reviewed the original part of it. Was it even Tony getting a penalty, winning the penalty by doing the old GAA trick of clamping the elbow to it. So they did show that.
Is it the Arsenal Brentford one? No, because that's what a lot of the comments on social media were asking for that one to be shown.
Was it Arsenal?
That's when they apologised for it. So they've come out and apologised. I don't even know if the apologies are actually helping them, which is another commendable thing to do. People seem to criticise them for that as well.
I think they do help in that it's like, you are correct, we've listened to you, we were wrong, and if the person is still angry after that, then they're just a bit of a dickhead. Like, that's little bit of friendly advice in human life. When you apologise to somebody and you're sincere about it, and the other person is still angry, then that's on them.
Do you remember when they did mic up the managers? Big Sam and Dave Bassett, about 20 years ago, Bolton against Leicester. It was a part of a TV documentary to show the heart rate of the managers.
Oh yeah,
how like tight they go to the brink. We have Vinny Perth here standing by. We should definitely ask Vinny about this.
Yeah, for sure.
Would ever be mic'd up for it?
Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock for you this morning. As Colm said, Vinny Perth is standing by. Keith Wood at 8:20. Emma Sanders talking football at 8:40. Colm O'Rourke is going to join us live at 8:55. Tommy Rooney's Power Rankings. It's an orgy of mead today. And then Colm Boyle at 9:30. So anything else very quickly we want to go through? Some
well, the game itself,
quick bits. Oh, sorry, it was a routine 3-0 win.
If you're watching if you watch the two games Leicester and Liverpool played this season, you would think Wout Faes was lumped off a Sunday League match and thrown in because they couldn't find anyone else. My word, he was crap last night, and crap again in the reverse fixture. Johnny Evans, was it you were saying this morning, first game in
since October?
Like, that's ridiculous. Like, Dean Smith's just like panic stations now, throw in these lads. Like, defensively they're abysmal. Liverpool were good last night, but Leicester, they're going down, lads.
Tell you, he was a brave interviewer. Patrick Davison on Sky Sports, getting braver each interview. Asked Johnny Evans afterwards last night, did you feel like you had to play tonight to do your team a favour? Like, were you not ready to play? And Johnny just says, no, I was ready. Didn't elaborate. Ugh. And Patrick let a little gap go, a little silence. Kind of, you sure? And moved on with the next question. It's getting braver. This is the guy that Jurgen Klopp often has a problem with.
Yeah.
Interesting questions, but Evans faced the media, but Leicester, like, God, they're done for. I think they've won one of their last 15 games.
Johnny Evans, stand-up character, brilliant career. It's unfortunate it's going to finish like this, but
one of Louis Van Gaal's mistakes, selling Johnny Evans.
Yeah, that's fair.
As cheap as he was.
Yeah, to West Brom.
You look at the Leicester squad. Madison's going to go. Barnes is going to go for big money. Tielemans will go for a free. Ndidi, Sumare, Castagna, all these players are like, Leicester are going to have a completely different squad next season. Like, so many players are going to go. That's assuming they get relegated. Even if they don't get relegated, Madison and Barnes will still probably leave, you'd imagine.
It's hard to see them coming back from this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yesterday was the 2-year anniversary of their FA Cup win. Their first ever FA Cup 2021.
That's mad.
And like, you forget how decent their campaign was last season. They finished 8th, got to the semi-final of the Europa Conference League, lost to the eventual winners Roma by the odd goal, and the 2 previous seasons they finished 5th with that FA Cup thrown in. And this time last year, Brendan Rodgers was talking about if we can just improve our defending at set pieces, add a couple of players here and there, things are looking good.
Yeah.
There's Jonathan Northcroft wrote about this in the Sunday Times at the weekend about the demise of Leicester City this season. He comes back after pre-season. It's like, if we can stay up, we get 40 points, we're doing well. That's how quickly it changed.
They have Newcastle, and then their last game of the season is at home to West Ham, who may already be cup champions and safe by that stage. So it's not entirely beyond the bounds of possibility they win the last game of the season and perhaps have a miracle last day escape.
Are Liverpool going to get top 4? Like, they are. Well, they need. Well, Man United and Newcastle United need 2 wins out of the last 3 games. Newcastle's games are Brighton at home, Leicester at home, Chelsea away, whereas Manchester United plays Bournemouth away this weekend, and then they have Chelsea and Fulham at home.
Newcastle will beat Leicester and Chelsea, so that's okay.
You think so?
Yeah.
They're on a bit of a slide though, Newcastle.
They're okay. They're not really.
Liverpool they're getting there. They're still snooker's required stage, but they're closing down. Liverpool obviously have to win their last couple of games, but you feel like they're absolutely going to in this form. And Trent's free kick last night was just ridiculous, by the way.
Do we need to talk about Liverpool, like the thing about their players all being, the midfield all being past it, not being the correct narrative, and the defensive issues being because the forwards weren't, like, have they actually managed to fix everything, or is this just because there's no pressure on them?
Could be a decent argument, yeah.
Is there as much remedial work required as we thought, or is there still loads and loads and loads of remedial work required? Because, you know, this form they're on at the moment is like Manchester City title winning form.
Yeah, 7 games won in a row.
But look at who they've played. Like, look at the last few games. So since the 2-2 at Arsenal, like, they've had Leeds, Nottingham Forest, West Ham, Tottenham, Fulham, Brentford, Leicester. They should win all those games, and they have done. I think it's the opposition playing into account. They definitely need to replenish the midfield. Like, Jordan Henderson and Fabinho are good players, but you need to rely on them completely.
Was it more tactical that everybody worked Klopp out, and it's taken him half the season to work out what his change is going to be. He's made those changes, a few tweaks. A few players have come back from injury, fair enough, but that actually the team isn't as drastically bad. So adding Trent's energy into midfield kind of means that you can still have the midfield that they've had. That you're not throwing the baby out here.
Yeah.
You're actually. Anyway, we
Leaves
can come
them a
back
bit
to
exposed,
that.
though.
We can come back to that. Other stuff that you want to talk about?
Yeah, the jersey clash in the Ulster Final, lads.
I didn't see one.
This.
I didn't see one. I saw one team that has a big round white thing in the middle of it.
How close were you to the screen?
One
Were
was
you like
red
this?
and one was orange. No, if I'm that close, I couldn't see anything. In fairness, you made the point that it was more confusing than it needed to be, and that's a fair point. Derry do have an away jersey, which would have been, white.
The white jersey is their main jersey. Like the red is their alternate. They threw on their alternate kit, and by the way, Armagh's orange is not as vibrant an orange as it usually is this year. But they also could have worn their black jersey, which they are trying to market left, right, and centre in Armagh. They want to sell that black jersey like nothing normal.
So Derry chose to wear the red.
Yeah, Derry chose to wear the
instead
red.
of their white.
And Armagh were like,
Well, that doesn't make any sense. I personally did not see the clash. Maybe there's a much deeper orange red colour blindness in the Irish. We have it's like what's the stigmata, curiously Irish stigmata.
But like, I think if you were in St Junix Park, it probably wouldn't have been as obvious, the jersey clash. But certainly on television, I thought this is.
I watched on BBC. I don't know. Maybe they're something slightly different going on with their cameras or something.
Yeah, possibly
higher level of grading or something.
Why didn't they had to change it to make it easier?
The whites. I don't know why they didn't wear the whites.
I would like to hear the players' perspective.
It's not terrible in that photograph that we've put up. It's not terrible in that photograph
because there's a big white stripe in the middle of it.
Yeah, but that's because it's close up. But on the TV,
it's far away as well.
For the TV viewer, there was 30,000 people in Ulster that it was probably fine for. But for the hundreds of thousands probably watching on TV and
if that was I couldn't I was looking at Twitter getting angry about this and I was like, I don't see this. The big white stripe in the middle is the giveaway that's the Derry lads, and the other one is not the Derry lads. If that was Cork versus Armagh, I would 100% I'd be like, yeah, no, too.
I have to say, my experience was affected by it. I have good eyesight, good colour vision, and I was in a hotel.
Obviously you don't.
Well, listen, I was in a hotel watching it from a reasonable distance from the TV. I wasn't sitting up beside it.
Okay.
But I was like, at times I was confused.
You were a little bit tipsy after the weekend in Manchester too.
No.
Got a little bit of context into this.
It was the goal kicks. Do you know when the
coming
goal
down
kicks?
off the high of Ronnie O'Sullivan, and
Possibly.
You're like,
yeah, maybe, yeah.
Who's that lad there? What?
Maybe that was it. Cloudy.
I'd like to hear the players' thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Were they able to see?
Yeah,
Was there any problem there? I thought it's classic GAA, like.
Yeah, typical.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have a bit of cohesion beforehand. What are you going to wear?
And ultimately, whose decision
Like
is
a
it?
night out.
Is it the Ulster Council's decision? It probably is. Like, they're the ones, it's their tournament. So, anyway. I do agree that the white, you're in your white and you're in your orange. We've tossed. Where did you toss? Oh, it was the crappy quiz toss in advance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it?
Jobs
Wear the
happens.
whites.
Yeah.
The black jersey's nice.
And then we're like,
gorgeous.
But then if they come out not wearing their whites, you just fine them. And then the county board is like, okay, we're doing what we're told. And all of a sudden...
The white and black would have looked brilliant. Armagh in black, Derry in their white with a little bit of red. They missed a perfect opportunity to have one of the great jersey clashes.
The most aesthetically pleasing GAA match out there. Cork against Dublin.
Aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, a beautiful red against a beautiful blue.
Ooh.
What problems there, like? That's what you need to aim for.
I think you're wrong. It's Kildare versus Sligo in the under-20 final, black versus white.
That's actually...
I think black white's too black and white.
Oh.
I think Cork Dublin is just a bit of summer colouring.
I don't know.
To the
It depends. The Dublin jersey has improved in recent years. It was terrible for about 3 decades, but they've got their act together in the last 7 or 8 years.
There was a version of it a few years ago. It was my favourite. I think it's gone backwards now. And it was the white collar. 3 or 4 years ago.
Their Argentina jersey was amazing. But anyway, let's move on. Marcelo.
Sorry, I thought you were going to segue from Argentina into Carlos Tevez there, but...
Well, I was about to go Marcelo Bielsa's back.
Yeah.
Uruguay, overnight. I thought Leeds United should have seriously considered reappointing him after Jesse Marsh and even Javi Gracia. But if Big Sam keeps them up, obviously it's job done. Good appointment.
You can't go back. You can't go back.
I would make an exception for Bielsa because he himself is such a unique character.
Big Sam is not getting the job after the summer. You can't give it to him. There's no way on earth Big Sam's getting the job.
Based on the first 2 games?
I don't think.
Or anyway?
I don't think anyway. Like, do you really think that the American investors are going to come over and be like, yeah, he's the guy for us? They're not. They're not going to do that.
No, he could win them over with his salesmanship.
Wow. And you were saying there was an amazing story on the football kickoff last week where Big Sam just chartered a jet one time because there was a plane delay.
Yeah, I was talking to Keith Tracy about this. So Tracy played under Big Sam at Blackburn. I was saying when he was Newcastle manager, he was only there for like 8 months.
Yeah.
Got a helicopter in, but they took the company car off him when he was leaving, so he had to get a lift home. The quick demise of Big Sam. But Keith Tracy was saying, yeah, similar stories. I have one for you there. When they were travelling somewhere with Blackburn, flight was delayed. Big Sam having none of it. He's like, no. Get a private jet. 60 grand he dropped in his credit card. No bother at all.
Oh, he paid for himself?
He does not wait for time. He does his own thing. He's on Big Sam time.
Do you think he claimed it back on expenses afterwards? I'm not sure.
We never got to that part. That's part 2 coming up this week.
You probably don't know.
Kickoff.
You don't get to hear those things. That's maybe the chairman was like, look.
Are you in any way surprised that Sam would do something like that?
Not a chance.
Because I asked that to Keith, and Keith was like, oh no, totally in character.
Right.
Yeah. Also said he's a great lad and he's brilliant at a night out.
So that doesn't surprise
good company,
me,
like.
Yeah.
You know.
So very quickly, Manchester City and Manchester United, Neville and
Carragher,
picked them.
They picked the combined 11 between the treble-winning side for Manchester United in 1999 and this season's Manchester City side, who of course are on themselves the brink of a treble. Gary Neville's 11 was the 99-11, including himself at right back. Jamie Carragher's 11 was a bit more subtle. He had Kyle Walker at right back, Ruben Diaz centre half with Jaap Stam, Ilkay Gundogan and Jack Grealish in midfield with De Bruyne and Haaland up top.
Took Gary Neville out, obviously.
Took Gary Neville out, but kept Irwin, Stam, Schmeichel, Keane and Beckham in his 11. Grealish's stats superior this season than Giggs's were in 99. Giggs up to the final had 3 goals and 1 assist all season. Not a great campaign.
I wouldn't massively argue with Carragher's team except for Scholes being taken out. Gundogan in instead of him. Gundogan's brilliant, but
yeah, Carragher made the point that Scholes wasn't always starting that season.
Exactly. Not on the team. He's not on the team. He couldn't get the Man United team when he was all talking about, he was the greatest midfielder of all time. Alex Ferguson didn't think so because he didn't pick him.
Scored in the FA Cup final against Newcastle that season. Pretty important at various junctures throughout the season as well.
Couldn't get in the team.
He would have started the Champions League final if he wasn't suspended. I don't know.
Would he have started because Roy Keane was suspended? Like, would he definitely have started? I don't. Maybe he would. Maybe he wouldn't. I don't know. But like, there's a lot of Scholes. Scholes had a great career, and his longevity was massively impressive, and his comeback from retirement was massively impressive. But, like, he wasn't in the same class as Roy Keane.
Scholes,
yeah,
different player.
He's a different player, but he wasn't in the same class. There's like a class of players, a tier of players.
Is that because we're Irish, though? Are we saying that because we're Irish?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he was in the same class as Xavi. I don't think he was in the same class as Iniesta. I think he was a very good player. Like, he had an excellent career.
But if you asked Xavi and Iniesta, they would say he absolutely was.
But sure, like, here's the thing: players always say other players are amazing. What benefit is there? Well, because then you end up coming across.
They don't have to say anything.
A bit of a dick.
They never had to speak about Paul Scholes.
I'd say they were all asked. Of course, they were all asked by the English media. Oh, Paul Scholes, he's world class, isn't he? Yes, he is world class. Yes, world class. Excellent. But I always killed him.
When they talk about Scholes, they talk about latter half of his career. Scholes, when he started playing deeper and controlling games, because Scholes was put up front when they signed Juan Varane.
Yeah.
So he was a sacrificial lamb in the midfield four, the famous four, which didn't actually play together that often.
10, wasn't he? Yeah.
And if he's world class, why was he being sacrificed?
It was more when he actually changed. When he wore the long sleeves as a young fella, he was scoring goal scoring midfielder. Changed the short sleeves, dropped back, played in the deep line playmaker role, and that's when I think his peers started talking about him as this great player. When you're comparing him to Roy Keane, I think he's incomparable. I can never remember a player like Keane.
I'd have Luka Modric ahead of him, miles ahead of him. Miles and miles.
Yeah, longevity at the top level, probably. I mean, forget Scholes retired and came back, of course, after 6 months.
I gave him extra points for his longevity. Anyway, 7:44. OTB AM live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. We're talking League of Ireland with Vinny Perth next.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. The Coigig Pod on Off the Ball.
Well, I'm smiling from a Manchester United viewpoint. Champions League nearly in the bag, but Man City will be really disappointed. They didn't look like the team that had won 14 on the trot. They're a bit lacklustre, but I won't take away from Liverpool either. They just got it right in terms of when they needed to press high, and then at the end when they needed bodies back, they were very, very resilient.
Keep up to date with all the WSL action every Tuesday and subscribe to the feed in the OTB Sports app now. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
It was low-key a massive night in the League of Ireland last night because the teams who were in European action were all playing against each other. Vinny Perth is with us in studio to talk to us about this. So Derry took care of business at home against Dundalk with a 3-0 win. Rovers needed a late penalty to get all 3 points against St. Pat's, and I'm going to talk to you about those in a second. I did want to just ask you, and in light of the refereeing conversations that we've been having recently, last night on Sky and Monday Night Football, Howard Webb came in and explained how VAR works. They showed that they have live audio feeds and live video feed of what's going on, how the decisions are reached, and it just struck me that this is really good. It's very educational. If only they could show us this in real time, away we go.
Yeah, I always said I think you need a bit of context for why people make any decision in life, and I think that's the key to it. It's like there was a yellow card recently in League of Ireland game that people went, or sending off, people went bananas over. But if a referee had been allowed to say, well, that was his 5th foul, I think it kills the argument very quickly, or 4th foul, or whatever it is. And I didn't see last night's stuff, and I only seen small bits of it here and there, people saying just stuff. But it's good to see it being explained. The cynic in me says Sky can be quite soft on these people because I think they work together as part of. So there's a lot of decisions you'd like a real, and I know they did go into one where they made a mistake, but there's a lot of decisions. I'm completely on your side with the offside ones. My brain goes to when's the ball being kicked and when did he exactly freeze frame, because if you're going to go into millimetres of an offside,
it has to be on this side.
Then millimetres in terms of when the ball left his foot, and he never go into that detail, and so you can't have one and the other. It's like and I know it's slowed again, and we almost have to really focus on when the ball leaves his foot and then go back to the offside if you're going to draw the lines that minute. So for me, that's a huge question that needs to be asked. I
think that will come. I have to say, I think eventually that they'll be like, okay, we know for whatever reason there's daylight, and I think with the improvement in cameras, we're going to get there sooner rather than later. But I do think the explaining stuff really helps, and hopefully this is like a new era of it. I mean, miking up all referees would be a good start.
Yeah, I think within reason. I think you've also got to remember, and people always reference rugby in terms of the refs mic, and it's brilliant, and I really enjoy that. Just think within reason. I think the certain sports tend
you still want to be able to occasionally swear,
but I think you often find referees aren't afraid to swear back as well. And there's a way of managing certain situations that I often say to people, particularly being a dub, because I've worked with a lot of people outside of Dublin. When a Dublin fella tells you to F off, it doesn't mean F off. And when you're coaching, and it's actually an art of coaching. So if someone from down the country tells you to F off, you'll give out to them. You'll go, don't speak to me like that. That's not acceptable. But if someone from Dublin does it, he actually doesn't. He's not telling you.
This is culture bias. This is bias against culture.
Yeah, but there's a
look at this. But so we can't say it, but you can say it.
Yeah, so it's part of our DNA and our language. It's completely different. It's using your own language and your own way of saying certain things. I'm sure you've got words that make no sense to us. So yeah, you have to let us have.
I think
the Dublin club should be allowed to say the words.
I think the audience would appreciate that, though. We'd all be like, it's okay.
One of my teammates at the junior level got a yellow card recently for telling the ref to F off, but he meant it in the way you're talking about, F off, more exasperation than Adam,
So there is a little bit there's a grey area there. That's why we need to be careful where we go with it. That's all.
All right, okay.
I'm just speaking up for the townies today.
The Dubs, yeah.
What about Rovers? So an 88th minute penalty to win it.
I have to say, and I'd like to think on balance in it. We'll hear today, brilliant game, football, all this stuff, and two teams, 3-2, but it was all of that. And when it's not, I'll say it's not. But last night, there was just shy of 7,000 people in the ground on a Monday night, and you've got to remember it's a school night, so which is a huge crowd for any sporting event in Irish, unless it's something big like an international or whatever. But that was a huge crowd. Weather was decent. Stadium played a big part in it. I seen Jonathan Hill at the game. I had a brief chat with him when we were leaving, and it was great to see. I know he goes to a lot of games, to be fair to him, that's the from the FEI, but you can see there's a product here, there's something coming, and there's a and actually I hadn't seen my sister and my niece in a long time, and my niece plays for Peamount under 14s. Better say Emmett, they won the cup against Bowes the weekend, but I seen them walk into the game last night. So why do I bring that up is my sister normally wouldn't go to a game, but her daughter's bringing her to it, and because she's playing with Peamount, she has an interest. And thankfully she's chosen Pats as her club, right? I mean, that is a joke, but there's 2 more people statistically going to a game.
Yeah.
And it's because of the women's football. It's because of she wants to be the next Katie McCabe or whoever. And there's something bubbling along here nicely. And I just think it's important to reference that. That's just 2 people that I know that happen to see picked out in the crowd amongst thousands going to a game.
It does feel like the clubs are aware of this as well, that actually you have a competition, a friendly competition within the clubs to recruit new fans, and they're going about it the right way as opposed to like being closed to it.
Well, it's all done, a lot of it's done through social media, so kids now, and the thing about bringing so many young kids are at games now. What's brilliant about it is they're getting this passion for football, right? So whether they're footballers or not, that's almost irrelevant. Where the game will grow in Ireland is they'll become the next administrators, they'll become the next coaches, they'll become the next referees, they'll become the next whatever. And I think it's so important to recognise that whether it's a detailed plan or whatever, it doesn't really matter. But what we're doing with these young kids at games is actually developing the game for 20, 30 years, and most of them won't become footballers. I mean, it's now becoming cutthroat in League of Ireland as well to get into the elite level, which is, it's great, but at the same time we're creating this brilliant environment around football, and I think it needs to be said sometimes as well as when we get things wrong, call them out. But I was delighted to see a niece of mine from up the road from Tallaght Stadium walking into the game yesterday, the Sport Jamrock Rovers, and I know why that's happened. It's happened because of the knock-on effect of a girl who has been given an opportunity to play football at a decent level with a good club, and then St. Pat's have captured her imagination, and then she's become a supporter, and she has to drag her parents along with her.
We were having a conversation on Thursday night, went out on the radio on Friday night. You can listen back to it on the Football Stream podcasts about the impact of the women's success now, and it feels a lot to me like there was a bang of the qualification for Euro 88 off this campaign, which ends with a very scratchy win in Hampden Park. But it felt too that there was big lessons that we could have learned from how the game didn't grow domestically after that success. It feels a good bit better now, looking at the current FAI, about their plans and the people who are in charge of helping to grow the women's game in particular. But as you say, it's a knock-on impact where it's actually a rising tide that lifts all boats.
Yeah, and I think I'm not going to be claimed to be an expert. I just don't have time to be in any way an expert in any sort of women's football. I have a passing interest for obvious reasons. So many things interject. But I heard, and apologies, our name's gone out. I heard that interview was played out over the weekend. I was in the car. It must have been Saturday afternoon, maybe that you did on Thursday night, bits of it. And I apologies, I can't remember the lady's name.
It was Linda Gorman, I think, probably is who you're talking about. But go on, I'll tell you exactly.
The lady who played all them years
Linda
ago.
Gorman, yeah.
Linda Gorman. She was... I found her inspiring woman when she spoke about football. I actually... when some people capture imagination, and apologies to Linda Gorman for not remembering her name, but when someone speaks, you're like, yeah, this is the person I want to hear speak.
You can feel what it means to her football.
Yeah, it was so genuine and so real, and there was almost like psychoanalyzing it, almost a little bit like she was pouring her heart out in a really good way to say, almost like you felt sorry for her that she didn't get the opportunity, because she was so genuine about football, forget women's football, about football, about what it takes, and in no way was she bitter towards, and that's the problem in many ways in the men's game. There's a little bit of bitterness around. He said something to me 20 years ago and all this stuff, and it was so it was really refreshing to hear, and I heard it on the radio over the weekend, and it was brilliant. It really was.
So the football last night, Rovers, these are the games that are, when they look back on, when they're picking the trophy up at the end of the season, it feels like these are the games they're going to be like, yeah, we deserve this trophy because we were able to take everything Pats gave to us and come through.
Yeah, it was honestly, it was such a good game last night. It was tactically as well brilliant, right? Great occasion, but tactically brilliant. Pat's done something slightly different, okay? The first half of the game, at half time, for 45 minutes, Pats were well ahead of Rovers. They dominated them in midfield. So you're talking about a midfield of Richie Towell, Jack Bunn, Gary O'Neill, Brian Burke. But Pats were hungry in midfield. They actually looked the fresher team, although Rovers had made 6 changes from playing on Friday night against UCD. And what they done was Owen Doyle dropped him to midfield, and it's when you play against a back three, they always say the way to hurt them is in the wide areas. Okay, so McClelland and Mark Doyle played really wide. Mark Doyle in particular stood there, and it forced. So Rovers played with a back three and the 3 centre halves. So they forced Dan Cleary into a wide area that he didn't want to go into. And tactically it made it a brilliant game. So at half time, Rovers had one chance. It was a header from a deep free kick, and nothing else. And then so for 45 minutes, Pats were in the lead, deservedly so, had the biggest chance of the game and scored a great goal through Mark Doyle, albeit it was a deflection. It was great pressure and really forced Rovers back, and it was good to see someone tactically do something different against them. But unfortunately, the referee put 2 minutes up extra time. Ball was running out of play. Young Sam Curtis, who's a really good talent, gone through a bit of a spell now because he's such a young player. He's only 17. And Neil Frugia is one of them where you try and shepherd the ball out. Neil Frugia hooks the leg around. Graham Burke gets a shot, decent save, and Rovers score off the resulting corner. And I'd say that was a huge moment in the game, albeit the second half changed, but that was huge, and it was brilliant to see somebody tactically try something different against
Rovers. So would they leave Lopez as the only defender on Owen Doyle, essentially one-on-one kind of thing at the back?
No, well, so Owen Doyle will drop in. So what you get against, and again, it's something teams should do more when they play against this 3 system, is Owen Doyle got involved with Rovers play with a box midfield. So they play with 4-2, and it probably didn't suit them last night. Ultimately, you've got Richie Towell and Graham Burke trying to do the same things, but Richie has to do it from a little bit deeper. And actually, when Richie scored a great header in the second half from breaking from deep, and that's what he's brilliant at. But maybe at times they've got to find that combination of him and Burke together can be difficult. But Jack Bourne and Graham Burke were very quiet last night, and that's when I spoke a couple of weeks ago. When you hit the sweet spot of a team and a league-winning team. And the best example of it is, and I don't always like going to England, is Gundogan at the moment. Just when your team is a little bit stuck, one of your other players, and it's not that Towell is below the level of the other guys, it's just when someone else comes and steals the moment. And Richie Towell breaking from midfield was brilliant last night. And but to be fair to Pats, they stuck at it, and again, tactically, they had a throw in on their left-hand side, and the way Rovers play and the way they're set up, and it annoys me that other teams don't see it, is they shift everyone over so they're vulnerable on the switch, and from a throw in on the left, Pat's right full gets a shot off. Keeper should do better, and Ben McCormick sneaks in and it's 2-2, and you think, yeah, Rovers were excellent in the second half, but you think maybe a draw is a fair result. But ultimately, the pressure of Rovers, and Towell steps up. A big player, Richie, who scores big goals over many years, scores a penalty, and it was a tremendous game. 2 teams really went for it, but you could tell that Rovers made 6 changes against UCD, and Pats freshened up a little bit with 3, but the freshness of the Rovers squad and the quality,
strength and depth,
won the game for them.
Chris Forrester heavily involved in a lot of the good past things by all accounts.
Yeah, he was very good in the first half. And remember, so we'll all have debates of who's the best player and all that stuff. But we've got some really important stars in our league and our times. Graham Burke and Jack Byrne, as I said, were quiet by their standards last night. But Forrester was everything that was good about Pats last night. Really, really good. But they had a lot of. It was a really good team performance from them without outstanding players, and I put that down to the manager. Then he obviously set the team up really well.
We needed, for the sake of the league, we needed Derry City to win last night and at least keep some pressure up on Shamrock Rovers, and that's kind of what we're going to be looking for now. Rovers are on this run and they've just been excellent and they've been taking care of business, but Derry took care of business last night with a routine 3-0 win against Dundalk, which maybe we didn't anticipate would be so easy for them.
Well, what I would say is Dundalk have won a lot of games lately without playing that well. Like they won really poor against Cork, but scored 2 really late goals on Friday night, deep in injury time. Pat Hoban scored 7 minutes into injury time, I think it was, to win that game. But what we are seeing with Derry, to be fair to them, I've been a bit critical of Derry because I think the start Rovers have had, the fact that nobody is ahead of them at this stage, or at least they should be ahead of them. Derry have a good enough, but to be fair to Derry, they've got Duffy back now playing, and he is, people talk about Jack Burns and Graham Burks. Michael Duffy is up there. Wingers are different because they float in and out of games, but Michael Duffy's up there, one of the best players in the last 10 years to play League of Ireland, and again scoring last night. But Cameron Dummigan coming back into the team is huge, and Derry on a really good run. We need Derry to be consistent, and like they did a great win against Bohs on Friday night, and that was a real marker for them. Again, not playing well, but their form up in Dublin is excellent. The concern for Rory Higgins would have been the form at home is not that good on that pitch, but that was a big win last night, and it gives them a real belief, as I said, when the likes, if you're a player and Dummigan is back and he's scoring and Duffy's back in the team and you see Connolly back training and McElhenney nearly there, it gives you huge confidence. They're only 2 points behind Rovers, so touch wood, and I think Derry have the finances to strengthen in the window as well if needs be. So it looks like we're about to have a bit of a title race.
It'd be good for the league.
Yeah, absolutely needs it. Rovers aren't blowing teams away in any way, shape or form. They're giving up a lot of chances at times, and you could see like it wouldn't have been a shock if it had been a 2-2 last night. So that's the good thing in many ways. Yeah,
it does feel like Rovers haven't quite clicked into their full form yet, that actually they'll get better and better as the season goes on.
Yes, not to disagree with you, but to say they need to be more clinical. Like they'd only really, I think, 2 shots on target last night in the penalty. That's where they need to go up a level around that final third and find the right balance. They probably didn't get the right balance in their midfield right last night. I believe for a game like that at Dublin Derby, someone like Dylan Watts is a big loss for them out of that midfield. But then who do you leave out? Burke or Tell or Jack Byrne? So that's the challenge of being the manager with all the resources.
Last night's result notwithstanding, Dundalk won't be too displeased. Like 6-game unbeaten run before last night. I know Darragh Leahy, I think, came off injured with an ankle complaint in the first half last night, but still the recent signs have been good for them.
Yeah, they've picked up a lot of good wins and they've stuck in games and got the job done. The challenge they're having is they left out like Hoban last night again. They put him on the bench. Daniel Kelly. Dundalk squad need everybody fit if they're to achieve anything, and they've had horrendous injuries at different stages. Like for many people who followed Dundalk for a long time, the team last night, Darragh Leahy aside, it's almost unrecognisable in many ways. You've no Benson, no Daniel Kelly, no Hoban, no Andy Boyle. So they need to get them players fit if they're going to mount a challenge for European football, because it's become so competitive now.
One of the comments in from Shifty Lad, it was a player I wanted to ask you about. I don't think we've spoken about Mason Melia on the show yet. Made his debut at 15 years of age on Friday night, the youngest league player I think for Pats, and Shifty Lad's making the point. Didn't play last night, he thinks, due to Irish under 17 involvement. He's only 15. I mean, how good is this guy?
Yeah, I've seen him twice play under 15 football, but I haven't seen much more of him other than I've seen him play some international football. He plays for the 16s and 17s.
We don't have to hype him up too much, don't worry.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, look, he looks a real talent. The problem with these guys is you've a catch-21. It's a bit like Sam Curtis last night. If Sam Curtis, before UEFA changed the rules, I think he'd be in a Premiership club now, and he still will probably go to one. Mason Melia could do it, probably going to it, because he might be a level above, and he could probably do it going to a Premiership club. But the rules have changed. But to be fair to St. Pat's, they've been very good at giving young players their chance. He's really exciting centre forward. There's two of them at that club. Young Noonan as well is a name for people to watch. But Melia and Noonan are really, really talented young players who have a huge chance. But, so many young players haven't kicked on, so he has a huge chance. Brilliant centre forward. And
when you're a manager, is it a case of when you're old enough you're good enough with players like that, or is there a bit of reticence to bring in really young, 14, 15, we're talking Evan Ferguson's or Mason Melia's? Is there, because you're bringing them into a senior dressing room? Now, I think there was a player in the Premier League this season who had to get changed in separate dressing rooms to the senior lads for obvious reasons, but it's an awkward one for managers because you want to put them in because they're good enough, but you don't want to bring them in too early either.
Yeah, it depends on some kids are 14 going on 18 and I mean in their
psyche or whatever.
Yeah. What's the word? Not mental development, but
maturity.
Maturity is the word. Sorry, yeah. And then other kids just aren't mature enough. And then there's the physicality side of it. There's that, and then the average age of league winning squads is probably higher than other squads because if you're trying to win a league, you can't throw in a 14-year-old away. You
win nothing with kids, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, look, you probably don't. Statistically, do you really? You don't. I mean, the average age, and I would say it's still there, of Shamrock Rovers is the oldest over the last couple of seasons. It was Dundalk before that. And when you're under pressure to win big games, you don't tend to rely on a 17, 18 unless they're exceptional.
Conor Whelan in the comments says, might not be a question for now, but worth the discussion. My kids' football season is about to end. Seems like madness that there's not some form of summer football going on.
It's not even madness. It's just, what's a bigger word than madness? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I seen something where, was it Cherry Orchard, and it was because I grew up as an Orchard lad, and I see certain things. Their final game of the season, and I'm looking at the window going, bloody sun is shining.
Finally, the sun is shining.
Like, the grass is now level. It's like, why?
Yeah.
Why? Because people go on holidays and you miss players.
Do people go on holidays for 3 months?
So what? Like a kid's missing for 2 weeks. Get on with it. Like, so it's just.
Is that genuinely the reason?
No, it's not. It's political. There is a section within schoolboy football, particularly around Dublin, that is not for changing and just not.
We should get them on, because I actually don't understand why the football stops now, when, like, we missed a month of football because the weather was bad, and we're going to miss more sustained period of time because there's going to be like more periods of heavy rain, and then the pitches will be unplayable because of drought at some point in the future, and we have no plans for this.
Yeah, but even try and coach a kid when it's 2 or 3 degrees on a Monday night and it's pissing rain,
and the ball hits them in the face and they're crying.
And actually, yeah, and even like, it's just, it makes no sense. Look, I don't want to be too critical of people who are by and large volunteers, putting together a league and all that stuff, but I'm going to be critical and say they're just dinosaurs. I'm sorry, dinosaurs who aren't open enough to improve the game, and not letting kids play throughout the summer, or not creating, and then maybe somebody has to take it off them and create a summer league and take it off them, and you'd be surprised the amount of kids and more kids who will play a summer league and just do something about it.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Was there anything else that we need to talk about this week?
No, I think it's important to mention and maybe young Ben McCormick at Drogheda United has come away from the game with some mental health issues. I think it's important to mention it because the bravery of a young kid to come out and say that and say it in public, and he's only a young kid trying to come through, so I think that's important to say. And Drogheda have been a really good club from in that sense. So no, sorry, Ben Curtis, I should have said, sorry, but young Ben Curtis, young centre half, was at St. Pat's, and the fact that he's been so open about it for me is really good. It's great to see, and long may that sort of stuff continue, because Drogheda have been really supportive of Ben. And you just wish fellas like that well, particularly in the modern world. It's difficult for young players.
That's something Drogheda have led the way, because I know Heading the Game was the charity that obviously named the stadium there, Heading the Game Park for Drogheda. I don't know if it's still the name on it. But like, that's a mental health charity that have done. I know Dean Arrowsmith, I actually know the lad who's involved in organising Heading the Game, and they've done serious work. So it's no surprise to me that Drogheda would be a great club.
And to give their new, I think it's Weaver Park. It's a local businesses now, but they're still heavily associated with Heading the Game Park. So. Look, it's just important that that particularly young footballers, because it is becoming, football is cutthroat in many ways, and people always. But Ben is part of Ben Court is part of a family of footballers, and very, very difficult for a lad to come out and say that at such a young age. It just shows you how the world is changing. That stuff would have been hidden, and I hope some other players are inspired by it to say, well, if he does it, why don't we all?
100%. Vinny, good stuff. Thanks for joining us. It's 21 minutes past 8 this morning. You're watching OTB AM. We're live every morning across YouTube. You can get us to youtube.com/off the ball, or you can tell your smart speaker to play OTB Sports Radio, and we have a live continuous radio feed there for you. We're live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now, and I'm delighted to say Keith Wood is with us. Keith, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very good, Ger. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good. It's been rare enough over the last decade, really, that we've got to speak about Munster beating Leinster in a big game. So how are you feeling?
Well, I like the way your voice went up there at the end, saying that. How am I feeling? I'm delighted, obviously. I thought it was a absolutely cracking game of rugby. It was exciting from start to finish, and I thought Munster were the better team on the day. And, it's been an interesting journey this year in particular, watching how Munster have played. They were so poor at the start. I think they got an awful lot of things wrong in trying to get things right. And from the onset, it didn't look like they were actually going to be able to get to where they wanted to this year, which was qualification for next year at the European Cup, but also the opportunity to be in the knockout stages. Even that was at risk for a lot of it. But the last 6 or 8 weeks have been pretty extraordinary. They look sharp, they look fit, and I have to say the drop goal at the end was, we'll slag Rog about it, but it was maybe not as important as some of Rog's kicks, but it was aesthetically very pleasing on the eye. It was a fine piece of play taken early. You often can wait until the time is out, and then it becomes a boom or bust kick. But there was still a minute and a half left on the clock. So look, it was a cracking game of rugby. It was very enjoyable.
Yeah, there's a possibility that we will look back on it as just as important as some of those big Rog kicks in the European Cup, because it's the start of something. It feels like this team needed something to go their way to just make sure that they believed all the messages that they were being told by their coaches. That's not to say that there was any signs that they didn't, but that you need something along the way to remind everybody that the work we've been doing is beginning to show signs of bearing fruit, and that fruit is tasty.
Yeah, look, I think this is I know there's been a lot of conversation about the fact that this can't be the final, and there has to be, they can't leave it there, and it has to go on to the next part. But without a shadow of a doubt, there is a monkey on the back with Leinster. Leinster have been the preeminent team for the last 10, 12 years. They've been on fire. And so for Munster to get the win over them was in a big match that counts, is hugely important. I think you can look back on it, but we won't know that for time to come yet. But look, I was interested with the amount of celebration from the players, because I do think this is something that they've had to carry for a long time, and there's a chunk of players there who haven't tasted the success of the previous generation for Munster. So to try and get to that point of where they now have a proper chance at it. And also, I think if I look back on the last 5 or 6 years, it also was a performance in a semi-final. And too often we have spoken about Munster's performances in the semis and finals that they've had in the last number of years have been not turning up, of not playing, of not looking to play. So you could see the shoots of a different style, it's not hugely different, but it's different, and there's a willingness to try things and a willingness to have a go. And it wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I think
in the previous semis and finals, there was nothing. It was kick the ball, try and win it back, stay in the game, eke out a win at the very end. This wasn't that type of performance. This was a changed performance.
It's a culture shift, it feels like, where they are willing to try stuff, and it doesn't feel like they're going to be hauled over the coals for making a single mistake. And so it just felt like it's a quantum leap forward. Why is Rowntree able to get this performance? Why is Rowntree and his coaching ticket able to get this performance from this group, or these performances?
I think they're trying. I think they're trying to play a different style. So I think Lee Mee's defence has been excellent. I think Prendergast's willingness to let guys go wide, and still some of the passing isn't good enough, and it's a work in progress. But I think there is that shift to say this is what we're going to go and do. And I also have to say I think it's built on pretty heavily on trying to promote Munster's own players, and like we've had this conversation time and time again, but I think we drifted away from that for the last period of time, that it was easier to take a player in from overseas than it was to try and develop your own. And I think in the last year, and actually partly because of COVID in the year before, some of the younger guys were getting a chance and getting an opportunity to go and play. But the vast core of that team were from Munster, and this isn't anyway. I always think Munster need to have a couple of players either from other parts of Ireland or from overseas to bolster the numbers. But the core of the team still has to be Munster. That looked like much more of a Munster team, had a feel for it as well. So for me, there was a change. Leinster played their part in that by not picking a full strength side, which I was unbelievably surprised by. But Munster can only do what they can do, and they did what needed to be done.
You were surprised by the Leinster selection, Keith?
It's one of the difficulties that Leinster have. We talk about the strength of their system, and their system is extraordinarily strong with a huge number of players coming through the school system, and they've been building on the wider club system to try and get more players in through. They have strength and depth that everybody would wish for, except when you have to try and keep them all happy and trying to keep every single player involved. That is a fairly unique circumstance that Leinster have to deal with all the time. And it's funny, I was looking at the game. I was looking when the team was announced, actually, and I was just trying to think how peeved would I be if I was a Leinster player not getting a chance to play in a semi-final, and now not getting a chance to play in a final that they may have gone. I mean, it's hard for players are there to win trophies, and I that as a selection seemed to be missing too many of the players. It could have been far more of a mix if you wanted to rest players. These are the only important games of the season when you get to this time of the season. So you still need to be putting out as close to your best team as you can. And for me, that smacked of overconfidence. And I think Leo Cullen said the same. He said, look, he got it wrong. And I do think that, when Munster woke up to the team announcement that was there, they'd say, okay, there's enough of guys there that maybe aren't world beaters, so maybe we can go after them. So, look, that's the case. I think it heaps colossal pressure on Leinster now again for this weekend. So, and they have put all their eggs in this basket. So it leads to a very interesting weekend.
It does lead to a very interesting weekend. What's your instinct at the moment about how that's going to go and the relative way both sides are coming into it?
Well, I see. For me, it's never give a sucker an even break. So Leinster losing in the Aviva, that is a chink. And they wanted to make that impregnable. And all the chat has been about the fact that Leinster have their own way in both competitions, that they're playing all their matches at home, which I think is just a benefit of the quality in which they've played all season, which has been absolutely extraordinary, but also the way some of the cups have been structured, the leagues have been structured. So, but this is a big chink when you see them lose the week before. So I would have said pretty consistently that the home team wins, and they have done pretty much for all the quarters, semis, any knockout matches, and anything that we've seen for the most part this year. And that just kind of flipped a little bit. So I would have said anyway that Leinster were favourites for the match of the weekend. They should well be. I think they're slightly less favourites than they were, but they still are favourites for it. I would still expect them to win at home with a fully stacked team. But again, you're like for La Rochelle and Raj, he's thinking whatever chinks there are in the armour, let's go after those. And he'll try and do something that's a little bit different. And if he can get his players up to the pitch that he requires, and is he then going to be able to destabilise Leinster? And I don't know. It's for me. We've watched them play last year. We've watched all those big matches for the last few years. They're great games. They're intriguing games. I mean, I'm looking forward to this weekend as well, because for me, they are the two best teams that have been in the competition, and they're getting a chance to play each other again in a final. It's becoming a real proper rivalry.
Yeah, it's like it genuinely has been one of those titanic things that catapults the European Cup into something that isn't just a regular run-of-the-mill tournament. And I think the fact that O'Gara has such a long storied relationship with the competition, that really helps. It's clear that La Rochelle will have another open top bus parade if they win this, and that really matters.
If you're two teams of Galacticos playing against each other and there's no backstory, there's no sense of real energy that you have. I mean, Raj's backstory is pretty fantastic, from his successes and failures, from his kicks that went over, his kicks that didn't go over, for playing for Munster, playing for Ireland, for winning trophies, for taking a rare path through coaching overseas, to then coming back to the rivalry, to himself and Johnny Sexton. I mean, there's 20 different stories to say that fit into this. It's why we love sport. It's the storytelling element of sport.
Keith, I think we should reserve a special mention for Keith Earls. We didn't really get to touch on him yesterday, but I mean, he was so emotional after the match. Hasn't won a trophy for Munster in 12 years. That injury he picked up in April, as Cian Tracy pointed out on Twitter at the weekend, could have been the end of his Munster career, and yet he was brilliant at the weekend.
Well, I didn't think he was going to be playing, and I don't think anybody thought he was going to be playing. And in that rush to come back from injury for such a big game, yeah, I think it's understandable. You'll put a lot at risk to play that game. I think that's fair enough. I think the same could be said for Peter O'Mahony, who looked seriously uncomfortable the previous week. But for Keith Earls to come back, having played nothing this year, really, I'm glad they brought him out to talk afterwards. Interested to see how wrecked he was afterwards. He put everything into it. And for me, it's a really important idea. And I know it's kind of almost passé sometimes to talk about that the Munster, that feeling. But for somebody who's been at the heart of it for a long time, you can see what it actually means for him to get there. Again, I would just hope that emotional pitch is one that that Munster are able to re-get to, because they've had a fantastic last 5 or 6 weeks. But there was an outpouring of emotion after the game, and they need to rebalance that. And thankfully for them, they have 2 weeks before they play again, because I think it would be very hard to replicate that inside a week.
There was an outpouring of emotion in South Africa as well when the Stormers players and coaches and families all realised it would be Munster and not Leinster that they were playing. Now, of course, head coach John Dobson, I think, has come out and said, well, look, it was also the fact that they don't have to travel for the final now, and the wives and girlfriends won't have to say goodbye for 10 days. What did you make of all that?
Yeah, I think it's both of those. I think one was kind of covering up a little bit of the other one, which was fine. But if you were any team in the world, who would you rather play? Let's be honest. You'd rather play Munster, not Leinster, and you'd rather play at home. And you're dead right. Their life became an awful lot easier for them. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy enough for them to win, but and they're pretty bitter about the manner in which Munster had gone down and had beaten them only a few weeks ago. So that's another game that becomes one of those fantastic opportunities, because an awful lot of teams that had gone there had lost. Munster won. Munster dug out a win out of nowhere, and their confidence has only grown since then. So, that makes it's always still advantage to the home team. It really is. That's such a huge thing in rugby. It's also a huge thing at the end of the season. So, if that ground gets full, which we just hope that it will, because we all these matches need to be played in grounds with huge amounts of supporters. So, but no, I think it's understandable.
It sounds like it will be full, and they will bring great colour to it, and it's going to be a great occasion. And look, we have another week to think about that one. But the game this weekend, from Leinster's perspective, Lancaster did his final Monday press briefing. He did interestingly say that at some point he'd like to come back and coach in Dublin again. He didn't say in Leinster. Is that like look, if the Ireland job ever becomes available, you should think about me?
I think there's why not? I've been interested by the lack of commentary over him leaving, as to whether that's destabilising Leinster or not. Where for every other coach we've seen leaving a place, we say, well, if you're going, go, whatever the story is. I mean, there's a high level of affection to Stuart Lancaster. He has delivered a huge amount for this Leinster team with Leo Cullen. Yeah, he kept the door open, didn't he? He kept it ajar. There was quite a nod towards Ireland, but it's become a place for him to rehabilitate his career. I mean, he was on the rocks after England in 2015. He was pretty much persona non grata in England, and he was I think he made a couple of mistakes in that World Cup, but he had done so much good work prior to that, and what he was actually doing with England. And I think Eddie Jones got the benefit of that actually for the first couple of years afterwards as well. You're dead right. He's got a soft spot for Ireland. He's got a chance to rebuild his career, not in necessarily the glare of the boss's role. I think Leo Cullen has shielded him through that period of time. I think they've been a fantastic partnership, actually.
Yeah, and he'd be definitely one of the top candidates for the Ireland gig if that was to become available. Assuming, I think if O'Gara wanted it next, whenever Andy Farrell goes, you'd make him favourite. But if he didn't want it for whatever reason, if it wasn't the right time, then you can also see how Lancaster could easily fit into that role from an Ireland perspective. And I think that it would be the type of thing that would go down relatively well with the Ireland supporters. But in terms of how the team are going to play this week, are Leinster a better side this time around than they were last year? Bear in mind, they won't have Sexton, and while Ross Byrne has been excellent, he still isn't at the same level as Sexton. La Rochelle certainly seemed to be a stronger team than they were last year, and while they won it at the death, I don't think that many people thought that they were undeserving of their victory. So is the pendulum actually slightly in favour of, notwithstanding the fact that Leinster are favourites because they're home, is the pendulum slightly swung in favour of La Rochelle in terms of the last 12 months?
No, I think it's more evenly balanced. I do think La Rochelle are better than they were last year. I think they're playing a slightly better style. They have a couple of different players in different positions. About half, they're far more confident. Ker Barlow's on fire. Bottia, pretty extraordinary, whatever position you want to put him into. They look more assured, also having won. I don't think they're taking anything for granted. I think they are building on that idea, and they're on that crest of a wave, and it's pretty interesting to watch. Again, when we talked about that passion, the kind of old passion of Munster that gets kind of dismissed at times, but it can gel a whole community, and that seems to be the case in La Rochelle, which is pretty fantastic. Leinster are a lot better than last year, and they're a lot better in the physicality that they bring to the game. I think the second rows are upping their game. Their back row is world class. Dan Sheehan is a year older and phenomenal. It comes back to that. Look, we'll be talking about this until he fully retires. But Leinster miss Johnny Sexton, and Ross Byrne has done, I think, extraordinarily well. I think he's had 2 or 3 ups and downs in the last 2 years. He's borne those incredibly well. I think you have to be impressed by the manner he's been written off and the manner in which he's come back and delivered. He's the best ball striking 10 we have in the country by a country mile. He seems to put everything over at ease. It's whether he can exert the amount of control on a team who are going to be under pressure at ruck time and maul time. So if he's under pressure, if he gets quick ball, there is an opportunity for him to unleash an awful lot from Leinster. If everything is slowed down an awful lot, it becomes harder. So look, I think the pressure for the management of this goes on Jamison Gibson Park. I think that he becomes far more important within this team. But the forwards have to stack up, and I have to say Leinster's forwards have been phenomenal this year. So, I cannot call the game. That's where I'm at. I think Leinster are marginal favourites because they're at home, but they're going to play against a team, one of the few teams that will really be able to outmuscle them. And if that happens, then La Rochelle could win. But it's one of those. It's rare you get to a final and say these are two teams that have plotted different routes over the last few years, but they have bolstered all their weaknesses to get themselves to this moment of this time. And isn't that all you ever want for a final? Yeah,
Keith, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Cheers, gents.
Keith Wood giving us thoughts on the Heineken Champions Cup final, which you can hear live on Off the Ball on News Talk on Saturday. You'll also get it on OTB Sports Radio. Kickoff is at 4:45. You can join John Duggan and the rest of the crew from 1 on Saturday. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. 2 on Saturday. Neon Night Edition is available now. A couple of quick comments for you. My favourite one so far was where's it gone? I was full on ready to support Leinster this weekend until all the Leinster fans started batching uncontrollably about everything and anything. So now I hope Raj and La Rochelle smack you again, says Richie.
It's splitting the country, isn't it?
I mean, that's how it should be. Right? Yeah. A friend of mine was trying to get me to convince Quinny to say I'm supporting Leinster at the weekend because it's good for Irish rugby. But it's not. It's good for Irish rugby that Munster beat Leinster at the weekend, because the rivalry needs to exist to inspire everybody on. But the Munster fans shouldn't be supporting Leinster this weekend. You just shouldn't.
No.
That does not. And certainly the Leinster fans won't be up for Munster in the. No, they just won't.
The argument doesn't stack up. I was making this point last week.
Not breaching any confidences here, but every time one of my friends succeeds, a little piece of me dies. That's what Gore Vidal said. He's right.
Yeah, someone said to me last week that I should be supporting Leinster because
you live and work here and they made you home here, Shane. Jesus, come on, by.
But how ridiculous is that? That's so massive Munster fans, say from Limerick or Cork or Tip or wherever, living in Dublin and working in Dublin, should support Leinster against La Rochelle. I mean, do me a favour, as Roy Keane would say. Ridiculous. there has to be a bit of partisanship in sport. It's the nature of sport.
Pointless, yeah. Fergus Keogh says there was a colour clash, Derry versus Armagh. Maybe not on close-ups, but with 5 or 6 players milling around on a long shot, it was very difficult to see who was who. News coming through that one of the Armagh players was bitten, and it was missed by David Goff, so the GAA will deal with it. It's in the Examiner today, and they make reference to a previous biting incident where nothing happened, where a dub was alleged to have bitten Paddy McBrearty, but in his report at the time, the then Director General Pádraig Duffy was very critical of both camps because nobody would come forward and talk about it. This culture of like, oh, what happens on the pitch stays on the pitch. If you bite me, I'm not going to tell anybody afterwards. That has to stop.
Well, I mean,
that has to stop.
If that's true, that's disgusting. I mean, biting someone on a sports pitch, no matter what the sport, you see all of the nipping going on. There's a lot of that in Gaelic football at the moment. There's a lot of nipping.
Yeah, and there was a booking for it at the weekend. Philly McMahon and BBC commentary was like, oh, he's just checking the body fat. But like, that's like one of the most childish, nonsensical things you're ever going to see. It's like, oh, you've done all this, you're a real hard man there, aren't you? Nipping me like a baby, like a little baby.
Literally, all the time spent in the gym and the strength and conditioning to be as physical as they can be on the pitch, and then they resort to nipping.
Yeah, I would make it a straight red card from now on.
Yeah, well, I would certainly stamp it
out. Right.
Sorry, I should mention as well before we move on, Ronnie O'Sullivan signed book. I did promise this yesterday to someone, so in the comments of the YouTube channel, I can legitimise that signature because I saw him do it. So signed by Ronnie, his new book, Unbreakable, out now. Cal Finn on YouTube commented, favourite Ronnie moment after the 7th World Championship win in the Eurosport studio with McManus, Jimmy White and Radzi, when the cameras go off and Ronnie just shows all his emotions in the 17 days, which really shows us how much he wanted that world title. He starts crying. It was in the new documentary. He literally, the cameras go off on Eurosport and he just starts bawling. It was amazing. Look it up on YouTube if you find it. So, Cal Finn, get in touch with me on Twitter or wherever, and I'll get that signed copy out to you now.
All right, time for us to talk about the genius that is Sam Kerr and start to make the entire nation slightly worried about the fact that we're going to face her in the World Cup. Scoring for Chelsea at the weekend as they won the Women's FA Cup before a massive crowd at Wembley Stadium. I'm delighted to say Emma Sanders, broadcast journalist with BBC Sport, is with us this morning to reflect on this. Emma, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, I'm good, thanks. Hope you're well.
It's not breaking news, but Sam Kerr is devastating when she needs to be.
Absolutely. I think, we've heard Emma Hayes, her manager, say that she's the best striker in the world, and I think you would find it hard to argue someone against that, because she just delivers in the big moments every single time. That was her 6th goal that was her goal in 6 consecutive cup finals for Chelsea, which I think is just an unbelievable stat. And yeah, she just needed one chance and she took it. It's
the hallmark of a great striker, Emma, isn't it? Because you can be not involved and disassociated from a game and missing chances and just not getting the ball, and then all of a sudden the chance comes and she takes it.
Yeah, because I think Manchester United were the better team in the first half. They created more chances. Sam Kerr wasn't really in the game. At half-time, you were wondering how Chelsea were going to get the ball to her. She makes those runs in behind, and that's where she is so dangerous, and Manchester United weren't allowing Chelsea to do that. They were really stubborn at the back, and then Emma Hayes made a substitution, brought on Pernille Harder, brought on Sophie Ingle in the middle, changed the system slightly, and it just seemed to completely unlock that Manchester United defence. And then suddenly Sam Kerr was being able to make these runs in behind, and that was it. And you just felt at some point she was going to have a moment. And when it came, there was absolutely no mistaking. And the backflip came out, trademark backflip celebration, which I think everyone at Wembley was hoping to see. Certainly the Blues fans were hoping to see anyway.
She had texted her mate before the match, hadn't she, saying watch out for the backflip today. So she knew she was going to score, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. She just knew that on the big occasions she always has those moments, and I think that was something that everybody sort of going into the final was looking out for. It was how long really can Manchester United keep her at bay? And yeah, obviously they did well for 70 odd minutes. But yeah, as soon as that moment came, I wrote this in my match report, but you could already hear sort of the Chelsea fans. They were on their feet. They were half cheering before she'd even touched the ball, because there was just no chance that she was going to miss it from there. And yeah, I almost missed the backflip. Had my head down, writing the information, and almost missed it. But yeah, she knew it was coming. I think most people in Wembley knew it was coming as well.
Emma Hayes' comments afterwards were very interesting, Emma, because she kind of compared the styles of the two teams. She said this was a victory for grind, and talked about how flexible her Chelsea team has become. Our team has become hybrid monsters, I think was the phrase. Like, what does she mean by that?
Yeah, well, I think this season we've seen perhaps a different side to Chelsea than what we've seen before. Chelsea have obviously dominated English women's football. They've struggled in Europe until recent years, where they've started to get into the latter stages. And I think by their progression in Europe, they've had to adapt their style slightly. So whereas, certainly in the WSL, they're used to dominating the ball and controlling teams. And then they've tried to adapt in Europe, where they're now a comfortable team out of possession as well. So like having someone like Sam Kerr, they are playing a lot more direct, where they might only have 2-3 chances in a game, and they've just become really ruthless. So they've now sort of taken that over across the whole season this year because of injuries to senior players. Sam Kerr has often been the only attacking player that they've got fit. They've had some other big injuries at centre-back. So, yeah, they have had to sort of fight through games and grind out wins. It's not always been pretty, but I think that was what Emma Hayes was addressing after the final, was that actually her side have now found a way to adapt to certain situations, certain formations, and when players are missing, they have other players who can come in, rotate, play slightly different roles, but they're all very clear on what they need to do. And that perhaps wasn't something that we saw 2-3 years ago from this Chelsea side. So it's a progression. And as I say, Manchester United were arguably the better team across the 90 minutes, but certainly as the game went on, you felt Chelsea were coming into their own. And it certainly wasn't a massive surprise, the timing of the goal, because they had just started to cause some more problems. So, yeah, it was, I think Emma Hayes said it was the most memorable FA Cup final win that she's had with Chelsea.
Emma, speaking of progression, there was a record crowd for a domestic football match. We'd seen just the previous week, or maybe 10 days ago, the crowd for the Arsenal-Wolfsburg game. And there's been regularly across the course of the season record crowds surging towards the game. And coming off the aftermath of the tournament that was so successfully hosted by England, it does feel as if there's been a proper learning about how to build on something. Like the word legacy around sports tournaments is always, like you look back in London and what is London's tarnished legacy now for hosting the Olympic Games. But for some reason, this time there does seem to be a very clear correlation between what happened and what's happening now. Why do you think that is? First off, is that correct? Is it a legacy, or has it been building anyway and the tournament was kind of incidental, or what's your assessment of that? And if it is true, why is that happening?
Yeah, I do think it is true. I think the game was building anyway, but at nowhere near the acceleration or the level that it has post-Euros. So, I do agree. I do think it has had a massive impact. And I think there's several reasons for why they've managed to be successful. And I think one of them has to go to the FA, because they had obviously planned the tournament with the future in mind, and they had been in communication and correspondence with all the clubs, certainly in the Women's Super League, but also with UEFA and other governing bodies around the world, on how they can make sure that the Euros had a lasting impact. So, it's not often that you give praise to the Football Association, but I think certainly they deserve one on this time. And likewise, the clubs themselves, I think, they were well aware that they needed to capitalise in terms of marketing. They needed to invest, and it wasn't down to just one or two clubs. It needed to be a collective effort across the league. So if they wanted better broadcast deals, then they needed to show the media, show the TV that they were going to be investing in quality players. They were going to be recruiting the best players in the world. So I think clubs certainly as well. They improved their marketing, and they improved their recruitment, their investment. And the players as well, because I think the players have taken a lot of things on their shoulders in terms of outside of football. And certainly you look at the England squad, and England captain Nia Williamson's a great example. She really strived in that role of responsibility. And, it wasn't just about going on the pitch and playing football. To her, it meant a lot more. And I think she wasn't afraid to show that. And she spent a lot of time in the media, going around to grassroots football. Obviously, they spent time working with the government to try and get football in schools. So, yeah, I think it was a collective effort, really, and several reasons why. But certainly, the success of England helped big time. But, yeah, I think certainly the way that they capitalised on that is something that should be celebrated.
Do you know, are there specific examples, and not to put you on the spot here, but what the FA actually did? What was part of their plan to make sure that they were able to unleash what has happened?
Well, I think just in general, it was about one of their main goals was getting more people into stadiums. So, when you mentioned there the attendances, that was something that they'd set out before the tournament had started. It was one of their main goals that they wanted to achieve post-Euros. So simple things like they had members of the FA going into clubs and sort of running workshops on how they can improve their marketing and their ticket sales. They were in correlation with clubs around when they can host games at men's stadiums. So, for example, I know they worked with Arsenal in terms of trying to build their regularity at the Emirates Stadium, and Arsenal have been a brilliant example to everyone. Certainly in the WSL, they played 3 WSL games there this season. They played every knockout round in the Champions League, and obviously they reached the semi-finals this year. And we've seen them host, huge crowds. Obviously, they now have the WSL record as well, which was made this season. So, Arsenal was a great example of a club that wanted to grow that sustainably, and the FA have sort of guided them through that. And they've now recently announced that from next season they'll be having 5 WSL games there next season, so that's up from 3. And again, if they can qualify for the Champions League, then all of the knockout stages will be played there. So that would be one example. Really, it was just about sort of those workshops and getting certain personnel in specific areas of expertise, really, to help guide clubs through that sustainable process, really.
Yeah, because in like the history of world sport, it's a really brilliant example of what happens when you get all the stakeholders invested behind a plan and everybody kind of fully understands what the plan is, and then ultimately the upside, we don't know what the upside is, but we're starting to see it.
Yeah, and I think that's the really exciting thing, is that it's not just one person driving this or one organisation driving this. As you say, it's everyone involved. It's the media, it's the fans, it's the players, it's the football associations, it's the clubs, and it's all a collective. And I think that's why it has been so successful, because it isn't just down to one factor, it's down to several things and several people working together. And that needs to carry on. That can't stop. I think that's something as well that obviously the FA are keen on doing. They're about to sort of hand over the WSL to a new company, which we were told yesterday would be August 2024, that they're eyeing that up. So that's going to be the next stage. And at the moment, it's about members of the PFA, members of clubs, the FA board, in conversation with a sort of CEO working group on how they can take that next step and ensure that the legacy of the Euros isn't just a 1-year thing or a 2-year thing, that it actually becomes a 10 to 20 year thing, and it continues.
I know you have the finger on the pulse when it comes to the transfer market. We do a lot of talking about Megan Campbell on this show, not just about her long throw-ins, but we're curious to see where her future lies, whether it's at Liverpool or beyond. Do you have any insight as to where Megan Campbell might be playing her football next season?
Yeah, well, as far as my understanding, it won't be at Liverpool unless anything dramatically changes overnight. She was in conversations with Liverpool for several months. I think she was quite keen to extend her contract there, and my understanding is last week those talks broke down. So I'm expecting her to leave the club this summer. Where to? We're not too sure yet. I know Brighton had showed interest earlier in the season, but they've sort of directed their attention to targets now. Short of interest, certainly she proved she was very, very effective in the Women's Championship last season. Maybe her age might put her off a couple of WSL clubs, but I think certainly there'll be suitors there. I think she'll. It'll, as I say, I don't think it will be at Liverpool, but I think if she was to stay in the WSL, I don't think that would come as a surprise to anyone.
Emma, we leave it there. Good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thank you.
It's Emma Sanders there giving us some thoughts on the situation in the WSL, and also I think there's significant lessons for the FAI to learn from the boom in underage figures in particular, and maybe they could start working on those attendances as well, because when we were talking with Vinny, Kathleen was putting into our group chat that the National Women's League here figures for attendances haven't seen a boost since qualification, or a significant boost. So it's definitely worth just teasing out why that might be, or what could happen to try and get people to come to the games, and then to be that rolling momentum that Vinny was talking about earlier on with regards to the men's game, particularly in Tala. And just to let you know as well, the latest episode of Koi Gig is available now, should be now, wherever you get your podcasts. And the best place, of course, is the OTB SPORTS app. Right, a reminder that we are live every morning with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Pascal Jacob says the best thing about the current URC format is it can't be taken for granted. With only half the teams making Champions Cup, everyone's taking it more seriously the last 2 seasons. Yeah, and look, in fairness, you probably shouldn't be able to make the final by not playing your strongest team in the semi-final. That's something that the league needs to decide, that if they want the winner of the Heineken Cup to come from the URC, then they need to fix the scheduling so that the season is fixed in a way where Leinster could have played their best team, and then gone into a Champions Cup final. Now, if that had been the URC final, would they have played their full team the week before? I don't know. So maybe that's not an answer to it either.
Yeah, it certainly would dilute it. Like, say, for example, Man City could play a completely second string team against Real Madrid tomorrow night and still make a Champions League final. It definitely dilutes the competition. So I think, yeah, your point about it being good for rugby, and Irish rugby, Munster winning, stands, I think.
Question for Shane: which is a better sport, tennis or rugby?
It's a very random question.
Do you mean a question for Shane, or do you mean a question for Colm, who's our
tennis man?
Yeah,
probably for Colm.
Do you have a view?
Both fantastic sports. One's individual, one's team. I mean, can't really compare them.
So many to choose from.
So many to choose from. One use a racket. I don't know. It's a great question for Colm Boyle. I think we'll get him on tomorrow morning and get his thoughts on that.
Peter M wants to know, would it be good for Irish rugby if we have a coach with the top 14 and 2 European Cups in 2 years? If he comes back, how good would Ireland be down the line with Rog as coach and his winning mentality? Yeah, of course it would be great for us to have a coach with that, but it might be better for us to have, the 23 members of the squad and Leo Cullen to have won one as well, so there's a bit of competition. As a biased Leinster fan, then obviously I want Leinster to win this weekend.
That's fair. Yeah,
that's how it should be.
Yeah, you're from Kildare. Your coach is going to support Kildare.
I'd be pretty happy.
Support Leinster.
I'd be pretty happy for Rog if he was winning against anybody else. I'd be absolutely thrilled for him. I was, thrilled for him to get this far, but no further.
No more. Open top bus in La Rochelle next week, lads.
Look, the La Rochelle story is absolutely
bonkers.
Mad.
Yeah.
Population of 75,000 in La Rochelle. Obviously, there's a big urban area around it, but it still doesn't swell to anything like 1 million. So this is David versus Goliath in terms of where they come from. But obviously La Rochelle have a decent budget, turns out, to sign some world-class players. And they've got a world-class coach. And it's really great for Ireland that we have a world-class coach. And you'd love to see a lot of other Irish coaches going off and making their way around the world. And there are plenty of them that are beginning to do it.
Oh, have you seen the Carlos Tevez story?
No.
It's brilliant. So Tevez was explaining why I always wondered why Carlos Tevez at City and United and West Ham, he could never communicate to the players in English or the other coaches in English. And he says, I have an uncle who played in River Plate. He's the only River supporter in my family. He played in the reserve team, and when he was going to make his debut at the first team, he got called up to fight in the Falklands War. And he talked about in the aftermath suffering from alcoholism, and that marking Carlos Tevez himself a lot, the impact he saw of the Falklands War on his uncle. So he said from a cultural reason, he said, the 7 years I spent in England were for me. Okay, I'm here for work, but I'm not getting used to English culture. Everything has a reason. Very few people know this story today. I can tell it. You want to speak to me, then you learn Spanish, because I'm not going to learn English. Fascinating to hear that insight, because I always wondered why Carlos Tevez didn't learn English. I was like, why? He's 7 years in England. I mean, surely he can speak English.
On a point of principle.
Yeah, so there you go. He did that for a reason.
Right, we'll come back to that story a little bit later on, but 9:02, I'm delighted to say we have Colm O'Rourke, the Meath football manager, with us. Colm, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. I'm just great.
A bit easier talking in the aftermath of a victory, I suspect, than it is after some defeat. So I guess it's just like this is the other side of being a manager. You get to ease into the week a bit.
Yes, you have to, like Kipling, treat those two imposters just the same. Victory and defeat.
With respect, Kipling never had to go up against the Division 2 in the Allianz Football
Dublin.
League. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's. I think we were slated for getting our defeat at the hands of Dublin and Derry, and the tactics and the open defence. It just shows, like, if you have good players, I think the systems are secondary. Good players always overcome any opposition defence, and we saw that from both Derry and Dublin at the weekend.
What's your feeling now on what it's like to be a manager versus what you thought it was going to be?
Well, I've been involved in management at school, level for 40 years, at club level, involved with Simonstown and Screen, and involved in championship wins with both clubs at senior level. So I've seen a lot of it, but it definitely is different. It's more intense, it's more time consuming, but it's basically the same insofar as you're dealing with players and dealing with young people, which I always found interesting, and I learn a lot from them. I hope they learn something from me.
We saw the difficulty some counties had, Colm, of getting a manager during the summer. Like, it dragged on for months and months, some of these processes. And in my head, I guess a lot of it went down to the focus and the attention on the intercounty job. As you say, you can have a club job and be somewhat under the radar, except for in your local area, but there must be a pressure, and social media backlash is another aspect of that as well, that comes with the territory, unfortunately, of intercounty management.
Yeah, there is a lot of that. There's a lot of focus, and particularly in Meath, I think when a lot of people would wonder what's gone wrong. It's not a job I really sought. In the end, I had my arm twisted. I didn't apply for it or anything like that. But the social media side, maybe I'm sort of got a bit old for that, and I still lean on old-fashioned values that if I want to hear somebody's opinion, I'll probably call them or talk to them in person, and I'm not that very much into social media. I'm not on Twitter, not on any of these things. You know, for me, the people that count are the people that are my friends. I'm not really that pushed about the opinions of others who may wish to castigate me or any of the people involved or the players. I don't sort of get involved in that sort of thing.
The players do, though, right?
I presume they do. It's something I don't speak to them very much about. They obviously come from a different generation, and there are very few people who aren't affected by severe negative criticism, and I presume our players are like that as well. But again, what we have tried to do is to build resilience and to try and get them to look at what's going on within their own lives and to grow as people, and not to pass too much remarks on what's going outside their inner circle.
Are you in this now for the long haul? Now that you're in it. I guess it would have been easy, or certainly, I don't think anybody would have blamed you if you had an experience of it and decided, like, actually, you know what, I'm going to do this year and we'll revisit at the end. But the way you're talking recently about your team being young and building resilience, like, you don't show the fruits of that resilience in 3 months or 6 months. That takes time to build and manifest.
Yes, that's absolutely right. I suppose, like, when I was studying economics long ago at college, Keynes had a theory in the long run we're all dead. So the long haul for me is, I don't know, maybe 3 years to see how this will work. We definitely have decided to go with a young, inexperienced team, 6 debutants against Offaly for a first championship match, 3 more last weekend. I think the 12 of the team against Offaly had played 8 or 9 championship matches or less. So it's very much a new team. Would like to give them a chance to grow and develop. I do have confidence in them. The whole management team have confidence in them. But the long haul, maybe a few years. I'm not really at an age where, I'm not in my 30s or 40s or 50s where I could say, it's somebody like Kieran McGeaney or John Kiley or Brian Cody or Sean Boylan or somebody like that I'm going to be around for years. I do believe that if we're not able to see some real progress within a few years, then it's not working. And it might be time to let somebody else have a go.
With that in mind, then, I suppose, when you were saying that in a way systems are secondary to the players you have, I guess that's kind of, you're in a period where you're building the players, and ultimately I'm wondering, will we actually see what your desired full system is until maybe the middle of next year? I'm not wishing away the future or anything, but actually, if you're still working out the quality of those players that you haven't fully implemented your game plan around that yet.
Well, we have worked very hard on the defensive structure right from the very beginning, and obviously it depends on the players, and it has taken 6 months to get to know a lot of the players, and obviously we would be in a much stronger position next year insofar as I would say that we'd know 90% of the panel probably before we started, whereas we probably only knew 30 or 40% of it at this stage. are coming up to Christmas this year. But some people may have this sort of idea, old-fashioned idea, that I want to try and go back to the 1970s and 1980s to have a sort of long kicking game, and that it's a sort of haven't kept up with the times. Anybody who's playing football now realises that they have to have extra defenders, that they have to have a very refined system in place. Yet, when you look at the likes of Dublin last Sunday, I was in Croke Park, and they still bring a huge element of long kicking to their game, which is very effective. But it's also balanced out with a very strong defensive system. So we're trying to build something for that. I'm not naive enough. I've been involved with playing sweepers at club level for many years when we won the championship here with Simonstown. So we want to try and get something that everybody is comfortable and that they're able to do.
You mentioned you were at that match, Colm, an 18th Leinster crown in 19 seasons for Dublin, 13th in a row. I mean, if you'd said at the start of the year that the Leinster final would finish 5 goals and 21 points to 15 points, there'd be a lot of rolled eyes. And Dessie Farrell's comments after the match were interesting enough. He says it's probably time to have a proper review of the competition and see who benefits from these big wins, the big discrepancies between teams. Is there a bit of mixture? I don't know if you had any views on Dessie's comments and on the future of the Leinster Championship, I suppose, in general.
Yeah, well, I think Dessie Farrell said quite correctly that the real competition starts now. And Dublin are an exceptional team. I felt sorry for Louth. They're coming up against some of the best players I have ever seen in the 50-odd years that I've been going to intercounty football. But the Leinster Championship is dead. And that's off. That can be put down to Meath's uncompetitiveness too, because in the 80s and 90s, it often was a two-team championship at that stage. And then, of course, Kildare and Laois and Westmeath came in with wins at different times. But the absence of a competitive Meath has certainly been a huge disadvantage to the Leinster Championship. And the way the structure it runs now, like all provincial championships, are not really have any great importance anymore. As Dessie Farrell did say, the real competition starts now with the groups of 4. And to me, the whole thing is a bit of a farce, going from a league structure to a championship structure, back to a league structure with the rounds of 4, and then on to another championship structure. I think it's very demanding of players. This restricted season, the split season, is certainly good for clubs. But if you're an inter-county player, there is no split season. And I see huge demands on players, a lot of injuries. To win the All-Ireland, a team may have to win 17 or 18 competitive matches during the year. I think it's too much. I think that the player going back to his club after this will be spun out. And I have the height of respect for somebody like Conor Glass, who has gone from county to club and back to county and is a star man. He's just a wonderful player to be able to do it. But I think there's very few Conor Glasses. I think a lot of county players, after the season is over now, are going to need a long break.
As a counter argument to that, and almost to play devil's advocate, do players maybe prefer playing matches to slogging out in training?
Oh yeah, there's absolutely no doubt about that. But there's a limit to it. You know, fellas still have to get up on Monday and go to work or go to college and things like that. And there's both physical and mental demands on them. So if you're with a successful club, it means a more or less 12-month season, and that's too demanding.
We did want to ask you about comments from Donald Cusack as well. The Tailteann Cup kicked off the weekend, as Ger mentioned, 119 to 11-point win. You know where I'm going with this, but he did mention the Tailteann Cup by name. So he said it's a sort of Gaelic football Grand National for disappointed also-rans. What did you make of Donald's comments?
Well, I made the comment that I wouldn't pass too much remarks on that. Like, imagine me making comments like that about the Christy Ring or Nicky Rackard or Laurie Marr Cup. Like, I see the Meath hurlers that played before us on Saturday, and they're out in Dunganny training and putting in similar effort to us. I wouldn't denigrate or run down a second-tier hurling competition or a third-tier hurling competition. And, you know, there is a sort of a type of sort of elitist snobbery with some hurling people who think that hurling is the greatest game on earth, and I think that it should be shown on television and promoted. I don't know where this comes from. You know, People like that are better off if they, instead of having rehearsed rants on radio and television, be better off down in their club doing a bit of work at juvenile level. Hurling is a wonderful game, and there's no doubt about it. As a spectacle, it's fantastic. So is Gaelic football. Like, look at the Ulster Final and the tension of it last Sunday. So is basketball. So is rugby. Like La Rochelle and Leinster on Saturday, I'm sure will be wonderful. The World Cup final between France and Argentina, or tomorrow night, Man City and Real Madrid, and baseball and basketball. I love all those sports, and cricket as well. Who's to decide who's the greatest game? I wonder who's the judge of that. Maybe golf is the greatest game of all. It can be played by anybody anywhere in the world, almost from 9 to 90, and you can play at any level, and the handicap system means that everybody is equal. So I'm not into this sort of making comments about other sports. Everybody deserves equal respect. The Tailteann Cup is a flawed competition, but it is a great competition for those who haven't got into the All-Ireland. But there are very many flaws in it.
Notwithstanding the flaws and how many teams are actually going to make it and how many games we have to go through to get to the point where we essentially throw out 5 of the 16 who are left. The win that you had at the weekend must have been a massive release of pent-up emotion for your crew. It's been a while since you've actually had a victory, and the programme that the team took after the Offaly game. What was that dressing room like for you guys afterwards?
It was a very happy dressing room, but I don't know. I've been lucky insofar we have a very committed group of players, and after the Offaly game, like they all stuck at it and were back at training within the week. So it's been fortunate in that regard that I have been lucky to be involved with a very, very good group. But it's nice to see smiles on people's faces after a game, and they needed a bit of confidence and they worked hard, and things turned out well for them. But they worked hard for it, so they got what they deserved.
Yeah, you can see things turn around pretty quickly for teams. I had 2 last quick things I wanted to talk to you about. You obviously would have been an interested observer watching the GAA Go situation. What was your instinct about that? Was it like, because I think the football crowd are going to realise over the next couple of weeks that it wasn't just the hurling crowd who are missing all the good games. Actually, we're going to miss some too. What's your instinct about that whole thing?
I'm old enough to go back to us and to remember when there was very little football and hurling on television, and now we've come to a stage where some people think they should be able to see everything. I don't see that as a big issue at all. I think it's a non-event. Like, if somebody wants to pay 79 quid or whatever it is and have access to every game, I think that's good value. Like, it's not too many people were able to see all these big hurling matches a few years ago anyway. So I don't know where this clamour is coming from that everything should be put free to air. If there's 3 or 4 matches on at the weekend, I think that's sufficient coverage. And of course, the more games are on television, the more it hits local club games as well. So you have to take into account that side of it as well. I don't see it as a big issue. Maybe those who are doing the scheduling for GAA Go did pull a fast one and decide that, they'd put on a few very attractive matches on a paywall. Maybe that was done. But for years and years, there have been big games that nobody could see. And just because they turned out to be brilliant games doesn't mean that they should be automatically free to air. There's been a lot of very poor Munster Championship matches and poor games everywhere. You can't just decide in advance we're going to show a game just because we think it's going to be a classic.
The last thing was the other 2/3 of the Holy Trinity, Spillane and Brawley, have both recently talked about how the kind of joy had gone out of being a pundit. Was that your experience too?
A little bit. I think it has become a little bit sanitised, and I think that you need somebody to bring a bit of colour and wit and enthusiasm, and maybe, I always thought that you needed to give an opinion that people sitting at home would say, well, I think he's a bloody idiot, or I agree with that, or something, but not to give something that everybody else could see. So I think Mr. Brawley is a big loss to television and Pat Spillane as well. I think they're a loss insofar as they give fairly forthright comments, and people had an opportunity to agree or disagree with them. But like, if everybody agrees with something and we all say the same thing, it's a pretty boring type of game and boring life in general.
Fair enough. Colm, enjoy the rest of the summer. Thanks a million for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
It's Colm O'Rourke giving his thoughts there on the Tailteann Cup and a lot of other stuff.
Fascinating. Yeah, fascinating. That elitism in hurling is a question that it'll rile up hurling people, of course, but a lot of Gaelic football people will agree. But I don't see why we always pit the two sports against each other. But as you say, over the next couple of weeks, as we have Mayo, Kerry, Galway, Tyrone, these matches that are unbelievable viewing, and yet they're going to be behind a paywall, people are going to realise that pretty sharpish, that they can't just turn on their tellies and watch it. So that's going to be fascinating. But yeah, some really, really interesting comments there. And by the way, in the Tailteann Cup, Meath and Down are on schedule for a pretty heavyweight clash at the end of their group phase as well. So the winner of that game, you'd imagine if results go the way that you expect, Meath and Down, the winner will progress straight through to the next phase. So that's a big one.
All right, it's 20 minutes past 9 this morning. It's time for Tommy Rooney's Power Rankings.
You're listening
to OTB AM.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
Never prolific, but it was always more than that, just about his goals. You know, I wasn't embarrassed with the ball at his feet. Very kind of nice all round, very accomplished player. Maybe even a touch underrated. Probably won't go down in Manchester City history of that time in terms of the standout kind of players. Probably wouldn't get a mention, but he looked comfortable.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Some of these critics, these pundits.
Generally speaking, I'd be a fan of off the ball. Exactly, and like Tommy knows football, obviously I listen to football pod the odd time, and
when I was looking at the power rankings, I thought that Jesus Owen must still be feeling the effects of these mushrooms.
They just dismiss you like you know, you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
Tommy, good morning to you.
Morning, lads.
It's the Meath Power Hour. That's what we're doing.
Well, listen, 98 days it took us to win a match, but it's good to be back.
There you go.
It won't take much to get the juices flowing again in Meath, I'll tell you that much.
No, and that's the whole point of the summer. I think, in fairness, Andy McEntee had always talked about how, you know, you go out of the Leinster Championship and then you go out of the qualifiers and your season's over. You don't even get the chance to train on, and that's when you start to see, you know, the in racing parlance, the 2-year-olds, the progressive 2-year-olds come through. So some teams... Go on.
Meath had a couple of very frustrating summers around 16-17 where they'd lose to Dublin and then lose by a point to Donegal and Tyrone in the qualifiers in the first or second round, and that's your year over and there's no chance of making progress. So hopefully, and Colm spoke about it there, some of the young players that are getting their opportunity this year, it is a very young team. There's a lot of excitement in Meath around some of the young lads, and you know, Conor Gray made his debut at the weekend, still under 20. He's a monster of a lad in midfield, kicked a great point. Jack Flynn as well has played a couple of games. Sean Coffey was probably Meath's finest performance at wing back. He's come in under the radar. So Aaron Lynch as well got 1-3 in his debut. The Tailteann Cup, I had said it a couple of weeks ago, it's going to be a good thing for Meath to win a couple of games and, you know, these players to get a bit of confidence, because there are very good footballers there.
Okay, we do have to talk about, are there two power rankings now, given that there are two separate competitions? You said at the start of the year, the power rankings, they'll sort themselves out as the summer goes on.
Yeah, well, look, we leave this up for discussion and debate. I tried to separate them into two, but I couldn't, because I feel like some teams are in the All-Ireland series but aren't in the top 16 in the country. But if there's a public push to separate them into two, we can do that. I don't think we should. Maybe we should. Will I get through slide 4 quickly?
Go for it.
Okay, so we've a good few movement here, right? So Tipperary are down to 31st after losing to Meath at the weekend. Tip and London are the only two teams in the country who haven't won that yet this year. New York have slid back 4 places. They were bombed into 26th place. They've gone back to 30th. The teams around them are going to play another 2 games before they play again. Wexford have moved up. They're quietly having a good year. They got close to Laois and Leinster. They got a great draw against Fermanagh at the weekend. Carlow had the win of the Tailteann Cup this weekend in round 1. They turned over Wicklow, kicked 6 of the last 5 scores to win by a point. They overturned an 8-point defeat that they had suffered in Leinster 3 weeks beforehand. Leitrim, probably lucky not to slide, but the teams around them have all moved up. They're in 27th. They were close to Antrim in the first half last week. Antrim pulled away. Andy McEntee's Antrim are having a good year this year. They were very unlucky in the league. They won by 9 points. Longford 26th. They didn't win, but they were unlucky against a good Limerick team, and they lost by a point in the Tailteann Cup. I think it's coming for Paddy Christie's side. Moving on to the next slide, and the only change here is Fermanagh sliding back and Sligo moving forward. Sligo are into 20th place, Fermanagh in 21st. The Sligo into 20s run, by God, it's been unbelievable. But none of the players are in Tony McEntee's team. None of them have played yet for Tony McEntee's side. So there is a lot of room for growth in the Sligo team. He came in for a little bit of criticism for his setup against Galway. He didn't start Patrick O'Connor, who's one of the most informed forwards in the especially Division 4 and the early rounds of Connacht. So maybe we'll see the real Sligo over the next couple of weeks, and maybe they can pick up a win and get into the preliminary rounds. But they're the lowest ranked team in these power rankings in the All-Ireland series. Offaly, Meath and Cavan got the job done this weekend, same as Down. None of them have moved. So that is where they're at. Moving on to the next slide 3, and the only change here is that Kildare have moved forward.
Sorry, Down are in this, right? Even though they're in the
Down are
Tailteann
15th.
Cup. They're the only ones
in the country.
Down are the only team who are in the top 16 who are in the Tailteann Cup, and so therefore you expect Down to win the Tailteann Cup. I
have Down as favourites in the Tailteann Cup.
Okay.
I do.
And if they do that, you can say they are better than Westmeath. Perhaps if Westmeath lose all their games, or well, let's wait and see. But
I think we're going to see that over the round robin. We're going to see that. There's probably, so many matches now to eliminate 4 teams. We'll see if every team get a win. I'm not sure they will. So there's going to be no dead rubbers. It's the only good thing, but it's a lot of games to eliminate 4 teams. Kildare, they're moving forward by virtue of their Dublin performance as much as that under-20 success. It'll be very interesting to see how many of Brian Flanagan's team get called in or even get a start immediately. We saw Conor Gray get a start from Meath straight away. Shane Farrell potentially is the one. Physically, he looks like he's got it. He's got all the football in the world, and he's really impressed under 20 level under the last 3 years. Kildare, 2 All-Ireland under 20 successes in 5 years, is so positive.
They beat the finalists last year.
Yeah, and finalists actually got a great tune out of the team with Jimmy Hyland and Paddy Woodgate and Aaron O'Neill have come through in that team, and a couple of other lads, Archibald as well. Let's see what they get out of this team. The footballers are in Kildare. It felt like it was something off the field or mentally that was wrong with them earlier in the year. They were just being easy to beat, but they turned it around. They really did turn it around, and they've proven that Dublin find it hard to beat them. Whatever they're doing defensively, the Dubs are struggling. Maybe the Dubs are a little bit off colour that day, but Kildare deserve credit, and I think Kildare are going in under the radar now.
Well, you say they find them hard to beat them. 3 out of 4 times they found them hard to beat them. The other time they scored 5 goals.
Both by a point. Yeah, true, Ger. Yeah, you're right. But they've cracked something. They've cracked something
on the 20s thing. Sorry, Tommy, to interrupt you. On the 20s thing, Tony McEntee on the show last week, and he was basically saying off the Sligo under 20s players, he was going to essentially leave them off, let them enjoy the time after the championship, and probably not call them up to the senior panel. Curious to see whether Kildare follow a similar pattern, because it'd be great to get them into the senior setup.
Well, I think because they're not under 21s, that extra year makes such a big difference. There's not that many of last year's beaten finalists from the under 20 squad who've made it through just yet. They're holding them back and trying to create depth, I think, is the long term. They're not thinking just short term, trying to win something this year.
But I think when you look at it nowadays, the Meath defeat to Offaly, which we won't get too big into, but Meath were turned over 6 times in the tackle against Offaly in the first half that day. They were a young team, a light team, and Offaly were wily, they were smart. We've seen how Offaly have done so well in the last couple of weeks as well. The 2 lads that have done well for me that have come in especially are Conor Gray and Jack Flynn, and they're monsters. They're huge men in and around the middle. They're only 20 and 21, but they are absolutely massive, and physically they can compete. I think that is just one of the big things. Sligo have some superb footballers there, but I think McEntee, I can understand that reluctance. They want to get a bit more into the bodies.
Yeah,
it's such a physical game at the minute.
It's interesting listening to Paddy Andrews talking to you a couple of weeks ago. It might have been a couple of weeks ago, it might have been last week. He was saying that players don't really burst through on the scene anymore, and my initial one was, what about Con? And then he, as if he was listening to me, he was like, Con was around with us for a couple of years before he actually, so he was doing the training, and I think John Small was fairly similar, training for years, and then bursting out of nowhere, we think, but actually he's been with the team for 2-3 seasons.
I played freshers football in DCU with a very talented team. I was, say, number 24 in a panel of 26. And John Small was our captain that year alongside Tom Flynn, who was the under-21 player of the year. And I just remember Smalley disappearing around December. And we never saw him. Next thing, comes back again towards the end of January. And we'd heard that he'd been in with the Dubs over that winter. And at the time, it would have been Gavin's first year. It would have been Gilroy's. It would have been Gilroy's first year, I think. So yeah, it would have been doing a lot of work quietly in the background, building them up, getting them ready. And like John Small didn't become a regular until Gavin's first year, and then really settled into who he is in around 2016. So like John Fogarty's a great piece in the boys in '93, and those lads that all came together. Like, it's a freak that Dublin have: McCaffrey, Mannion, Kilkenny, Fenton, and I've managed to forget somebody there. Small. Like, all from the same age group. But it took them all different times to settle. Like, Fenton didn't play minor. Mannion and McCaffrey were freaks. They had the speed. Kilkenny was just an awesome player at that age. And Fenton obviously just grew into himself as the years went on. And like, they've never been beaten together when they've been on the field together. So not every generation of footballer can come through at the same time, at the same speed. Like David Clifford, when we spoke to him a couple of weeks ago on the Football Pod, okay, he was very interesting. He spoke about learning, about decision making. He can't be 4 from 8. He needs to be 7 from 8 when he's shooting. But the physicality was the big thing as well for him to come in. And David Clifford is a big man.
He was, yeah, he was. I mean, if he's saying that, like a lot of these other kids coming through, you know, it will be 23, 24 before they are ready to make it. So anyway, Westmeath 16 down 15, Cork down 1 to 14.
Kildare 13th, Louder 12th, and Kildare 11th. These two haven't moved in a long time. They were both beaten well in their provincial finals. They both scored 15 points. They illustrated some of the positives that they've shown that their teams have over the last couple of years. But obviously the gulf in class between the very best in the game at the minute and those teams are just so evident. But Clare and Louth are two teams that are maximising what they have at the moment. Donegal and Kent, they haven't moved. Like, Clare and Donegal are going into this game in Ennis at the weekend. Genuinely, I said it on the pod this week, and the lads thought I was trying to be cute. Donegal have a free shot this weekend. Donegal are coming into this game. Nobody's giving them a hope in hell. No. All you need is one win to get through in the round robin, and it is a vital game for both Clare and Donegal. It's in Ennis, which gives a huge positive for Clare. But like, this game is going to be so tight at the weekend, and likewise with Sligo Kildare. That game on Sunday, neither game is going to get much credence over the next couple of days. We're going to be talking about Kerry Mayo and Galway Tyrone, but both of those games are going to be very close.
They're actually the biggest games of the weekend.
Yeah,
I think they could be.
They're the ones with the jeopardy in it. Okay, my prediction, my homer prediction, is that Kildare are going to finish top of this page by the end of the season. That Donegal will be down to down below Down and Westmeath. That they'll be 15th or 16th. That's my wild prediction.
Well, Monaghan are sitting there in a group with the two teams behind them on your power rankings, Tommy. Donegal, Clare, and you've got Derry as well. Who would you expect between those two beating finalists of the weekend, Louth and Clare, would just like to have a chance of progressing? Louth are in a group with Kerry, Mayo, Cork, and as I said, Clare in that group with Donegal, the mini Ulster, Donegal, Monaghan, and Derry.
Yeah, I think Louth's group is tougher. But again, it comes down to that Cork game. All you need is one win to get through to a preliminary quarter-final, and then you have a chance to get into a quarter-final, and that is where these teams want to get to. Clare are in a mini Ulster, as you said. I think they're going to relish it, but it's, again, those games are going to be so tight. But
preliminary quarter-finals, the team who finishes second in their divisions are going to have home advantage against the teams who finished third in other divisions.
That's a huge advantage.
It is a big advantage, but so much can happen in these groups. Like, a draw, a win is going to swing the balance so much. Look, I understand the argument.
It's not that big a deal. Castlebar isn't amazing always.
But having a home match in order to get to an All-Ireland quarter-final, that's a pretty big carrot.
I think that these teams are so evenly balanced that home advantage is obviously worth a couple of points. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's the end of your season if you finish third. You could easily flip it against a team,
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on because we've got to get to the bit. Go on.
Shane's point, in fairness, if the top four go through as the top four, as we'd expect, the four provincial winners, Shane's point about the next 8 being so close to each other is very true. They are all so close to each other. Some are in good form, some aren't. But they are very close to each other in terms of the quality on paper. Okay, top 8. There's been a couple of movements here. Roscommon have slid back to 8. Tyrone have slid back to 7th. Armagh, despite losing again, have moved forward to 6th. Going to be accused of an Armagh bias here, but they got so much right at the weekend. so much right, and they're going to be kicking themselves. And I mentioned Kieran McGeeney sliding doors moments, and Jerry, you'll be well aware of them as Kildare boss. Like, so close on so many occasions to so many big days, and likewise again a penalty shootout killing them. Like, extra time, they had it. Normal time, they even could have snuck it. It looked like they had time to run to perfection. Mayo stood back to 5th. Derry, like, what a performance. Like, in fairness, like, Shane McGuigan is the man. Conor Glass said it after the weekend. Shane McGuigan, in my opinion, is the person who pulled Derry over the line at the weekend. And we questioned at the start of the year, did Derry have enough? Had they done enough to progress from the team that we saw last year? Well, McGuigan has brought his game on tenfold. Brendan Rodgers' movement into midfield has made a massive difference. Owen McAvoy's emergence as one of the best defenders in the game at the minute. Like, the job that he did on Murnan and Turbot, swapping with Chrissy McKay throughout that game. And even like Lachlan Murray, who we were looking at not getting a chance to the under-20s because of that rule at the minute. He comes in and he scores a clutch point with a minute to go. He does his job and finishes it off. So, look, I think Derry deserve to be in 4th place. Winning back-to-back Ulsters is an incredible feat. So, they're there. The Dubs, Ger, they haven't moved. They're still in 3rd place.
Still behind Galway.
Galway in 2nd and Kerry are in 1st. And I am putting it on the record right now. Galway are my favourites this year for the All-Ireland.
Jesus, Tommy. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I just really like what I'm seeing from Galway.
Well, hang on. This is your power rankings. You then need to make them number 1. You need to have the courage to screw your conviction to the wall. They're your favourites.
Okay, maybe I framed that wrong. I think Galway are in the best position. Like, being in 1st place in June when there's 6-7 games to go isn't necessarily the best place to be. I just think what Galway have shown this year, and I understand what you're saying about Dublin, and I think you've made a compelling case, and I think you could look like the smartest man in the country come the start of August. But
I hadn't even added Cluxton back into the team.
I know they hadn't. And we got, there were some scary signs at the weekend, but there was also some signs that they're not.
No, it's fair point.
They're a different Dublin. They're a different Dublin than the Dubs we saw winning 5 in a row. So they're a very different team. But Galway for me, they've just grown and they've come on leaps and bounds from last year.
Is it the strength and depth, Tommy, with Galway? Because you can't win in All Ireland without strength and depth, and maybe that was what was missing last year.
It's the conviction I'm seeing with them. It's like I mentioned, some of the improvements Derry have made last year. Like Matty Tierney needs to show it again, right? And we need to see it from Matty Tierney. Everybody will talk about Shane Walsh needing to, double down and show us what he has consistently. We haven't seen them click all together yet, and I just think we're starting to see glimpses of Ian Burke, and his performance against Roscommon was awesome. He kicked points the last day, showed he could do that. Conroy was obviously missing the last day. I just think if we get this full Galway team together, I just think that they have options now off the bench that are making an impact, and I just think that they're going to give us a little bit more. Well, let's see what Kerry Mayo is like this weekend, but I just have a feeling about Galway this year. I just did.
One of the things when you were talking about Derry there, Oren Lynch's cockiness and performance in general was brilliant. Is that one thing that could be a negative in terms of Galway? Like, I don't know, do they know between Conor Gleeson and Bernard Power who their number 1 is? Obviously Gleeson was in the last day, but can that be if you have question marks over any one of your starting 15, that can be an issue? Yeah,
well, James and Paddy would feel quite strongly about it, that you should have a championship goalkeeper and keep it at that. I can kind of understand where Galway are coming from. Bernard Power and Conor Gleeson are very different keepers. It's not as big a contrast as Clark and Henley were, but it's probably not far off it as well. And I can kind of understand why a manager would do that. Like, kickouts are obviously so important, but it can be horses for courses in different games as well. Now, the lads fundamentally disagree with me on that, but I can kind of see where Galway are coming out on it. It can be a weakness, Shane, for sure. But look at Rafferty. Rafferty makes a blunder for the Brendan Rodgers goal, but Rafferty is also the man who punches the holes, who kicks 2 inspirational points, who lays on minimum another 3 or 4 scores with his bravery.
Kicks some wides. It's
obviously he does, Ger.
It's a mixed bag.
It is. But I just think he's bringing enough to justify it. I do.
I think. Look, I don't know. I'm on the fence about it a little bit because the wides suck the spirit of the crowd.
You were about to say momentum, weren't you?
They break up the back of the team. Like, they just, all the energy. They're real energy stoppers. And I'm just, Hollywood balls, they're great when they go over. And it's like, yeah, but like, what about the other 2? To Clifford's point, right?
7 out of 8, yeah.
Like, it's not 7 out of 8, it's 50-50.
Okay, well, take the points aside. his passing, his breaking the line.
Excellent.
But that is so important. And when you look at it, an attack that only Rian O'Neill really stood up. He was shut down apart from moments. Rian O'Neill had moments. Turbot, Murnan, Duffy.
Maybe in a semi-final, 5 out of 6 of them go over and they reach an Ireland final, and it's totally worthwhile. And you have to go through this process of finding your range and improving your accuracy. And
Absolutely.
they're trying something. Like I think what McGeeney is doing is really phenomenal. And I see this abuse that he gets on Twitter. I'm like, you're all mad. You're all just mad.
It's nearly coming as much from inside Armagh, and counties that can just eat themselves alive.
Kildare burned them out. The fools.
Yeah.
What were they doing?
Listen, last word on that.
Decade in the wilderness is their sin for their sins.
Exactly. But we talk about sliding doors moments, like McGeeney's sliding door moments. We mentioned them already. Lynch and Rafferty. Owen Lynch's saves in the shootout were unbelievable. Rafferty's kickouts in the last couple of minutes when Derry put the squeeze on, he was unlucky. He had to head down for one move. I don't think there was enough movement from him, but the kickouts let him down. Lynch's kickouts, he got away with some. Lynch got put over the line for a 45 that O'Neill nailed. Excuse my language. I got excited. Nailed.
That's how good it was.
Moment of the game, like Goff obviously throws that ball up. How? Like, I don't know whether it should have been a free or not. Like, it looks like it should have been a free, that he overcarried it, that he dropped the ball, that he held two Armagh defenders off in the line. How that ball didn't roll over the line? Like, you would put your house and your holiday home abroad on Rian O'Neill kicking that ball over the bar from the 45. That was a joke. So, like, the fine lines, the inches, like that are in these keeper decisions. Last point on this: Colm O'Rourke said that in punditry today, that colour, wit and enthusiasm is missing. Tune into the football pod. Paddy Anders and James Donoghue will bring it for you.
As great a plug as you could get. Yeah,
I'm very excited about a bit of work that James Donoghue and Darren Conway are doing for us today.
I'm excited too.
Keep an eye on your socials for that.
I haven't heard about this, right?
It is as random and brilliant as it sounds. If it is as random and brilliant as it sounds, it's going to be one of our all-time great things coming to Off the Ball social channels near you soon. Tommy, you came, you saw, you smeared us with your power rankings, and we are either happy or upset depending on where you're from. Good stuff. Thanks a million.
Thanks, lads. Good work today. Bye-bye.
A reminder, the only place to listen back to Monday Night Rugby, Wednesday Night Rugby and Brian O'Driscoll in full is on the OTB Rugby podcast feed. You can subscribe now on the OTB app. On tomorrow's show, we're back with Bevan Parsons on Ireland 7's big win. James Tracy's going to join us in studio to stir the pot a little bit more for the game against Roan O'Gara at the weekend. Kildare boxer Dennis Hogan is in studio ahead of his Katie Taylor undercard fight, Champions League reaction, and more GAA build-up, plenty more as well. Colm Boyle talking to Joe on last night's show is how we're playing you out. Have a terrific Tuesday.
So, to the football over the weekend that was, at Clonasteri are back-to-back Ulster champions, 115 to Armagh's 18 points after extra time, and Derry were 3-1 winners on penalties. Still very strange to say that kind of a sentence, but 3-1 winners on penalties. Meanwhile, Kerry and Galway won their provincial finals by 14 points each. The Dubs upped the ante, 13 Leinster titles in a row, beating Louth by 21 points, 5-21 to 15 points at Croke Park yesterday. Very happy to say, four-time All-Star with Mayo, Colm Boyle is on the line. Good evening.
Joe, how are you doing?
Talk about a contrast. We have Dublin in the last boring days of pre-season, bit of a trot, and then we have Derry and Armagh living and dying by every bouncing ball yesterday.
Yeah, such a contrast, Joe. I suppose 1 out of 4 isn't bad, maybe, to get that competitiveness, but
it's not great.
No, it's not great. No, and we'll probably talk a bit more about that again. But I suppose from just an entertainment point of view, it was great to get something that we could cling on to and get a small bit excited about. I didn't think it was a brilliant game, and we'll probably come to that a bit more as well. But any day you get a bit of extra time, drama, and then obviously the drama that comes to penalty shootouts, you'll take that any day of the week, considering what we had to watch in Dublin Louth and obviously the weekend before as well.
So when you say not a brilliant game, clearly there was lots of drama and entertainment. You're talking about the quality?
Yeah, certainly, yeah. The quality, just the way it played out. I think the first half especially, I thought, Joe, was drab enough. I think it was very similar set up to what we saw in the Ulster Final last year with Derry and Donegal. A lot of slow build-up attacks, a lot of long bouts of phases of possession. And I think Derry win the throw-in, Joe, and they hold the ball for something like 4 minutes before they get a shot away from Shane McGuigan. They get a score from that. And that was almost a signal of what was to come for the rest of the half. I was very surprised with Armagh that they allowed, considering they had the wind at their backs, that they allowed Derry really to just be really comfortable to hold the ball for them long bouts of possession. And the most surprising aspect was me that they were allowing Derry have possession from their own kickouts. I think it took to about 30 minutes into the game before they actually pushed up on a Derry kickout, and then they won 2 quick ones in a row and got 2 scores from that. So, I think when Armagh look back on that, even if that was what they were set up to do before the game, I think they needed to look at the conditions. They needed to look at having the wind in the first half and being a bit braver and attacking Derry. I think they let Derry settle into the game very, very easy. And I think they only turned over Derry twice in that first half, Joe. I mean, you considering Derry had up on 70% possession, the amount of times and chances you have there to make tackles and turnovers and get in their faces, and they never really did it. So I felt that's why the first half was drab enough. Second half got a bit better. I think both teams came out a bit and, kind of went at it a small bit more. And there was really good bouts of play in that second half and from there on in. But yeah, look, it's very hard to be critical of a game like that when you do get that excitement, like I spoke about at the end, because we were all dying for it after what we'd witnessed in the other 3.
What is the Armagh logic, do you think, in the first half?
It's very hard to know. Like, it's just like it's a game of containment. Like, we're just going to play cat and mouse in here and try and see can we frustrate Derry. But Derry are very, very, very comfortable in that environment, and they've probably become one of the best teams in the country at just holding the ball and playing it around until they work a scoring opportunity. Another strange aspect for me is that Brendan Rodgers didn't look like from the TV. It was very hard to know who was actually meant to be picking him up. And obviously Kieran Mackin gets put on him towards the end of the first half, but he'd done a lot of damage in that regards by hitting 1-2. So there was a couple of things from Armagh that I'd look at of why they didn't attack the game a bit more, because Armagh are brilliant at attacking opposition kickouts and winning the ball from there and getting scores off from there. And to sit off them like they did in the first half, I just felt it gave Derry a platform, especially. Like, to me, if Armagh played the last 5 minutes of the first half, if they played that for the whole first half, they could have actually gone in 4 or 5 in front at half time.
There does at times in Ulster football in particular, and in finals in particular over the last couple of years, seem to be that policy that you're not so sure about, of just staying in the game. Just like, once we're within a point or two, let's not push it. And even on Derry's part, it's like we're back to 1 point, let's push it again, and then put the handbrake up again. It's almost as if, in a way, they're both waiting for the last 15 minutes, and then maybe we'll go for it. But there's no need to take any risks whatsoever and try and win a game early.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, especially when you get to a final. Because if you look at Tyrone Monaghan, for example, earlier on in the year, and even Derry against Monaghan, they had a lot of strong elements of both teams really just going for it and attacking each other and attacking the game. But it comes to the final, then very similar, like I mentioned, to the Ulster Final last year, Derry, Donegal, where it's just so cagey, and it's almost like no one wants to make a mistake. And you mentioned it there, just stay in the game, don't give the opposition anything, and we'll try and win this in the last 10 minutes rather than going after it early, like I feel Armagh could have yesterday with that wind at the back especially.
How damaging is this one for McGeeney, who has been there now for 9 years, never won silverware? There's a fair chance you would think Armagh will exit the championship quarter-final territory. Just feels like that's about where they are. And so an Ulster title, which still has real credibility and real currency, an Ulster title, a first in 15 years, would have put such a sheen on the season and the direction in which they're going. Whereas now it's yet another year of just bumping their head against that ceiling and not making the breakthrough in Ulster.
Yeah, I think they'll be good at today, Joe. I think they really will be. And you mentioned McGeeney there, him especially. He knows he was under pressure. They needed that Ulster title more than Derry did yesterday. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think how we look back on it, Joe, will all depend on how they do. Okay, yeah. So we're kind of saying, okay, it could be a quarter-final exit or something like that. If they do bounce back from this and go deep into the championship, get to a semi-final or even an All-Ireland final, which may be unlikely, but you just don't know how this championship's going to play out. Then only then we might be able to have a proper look back at and about what we think about losing an Ulster final. But I think they'll be good at it, there's no doubt about it. Yeah. I think McGeeney needed to win that.
Yeah. Listen, semi-final, final, all bets are off. It's a great season, hands down.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Otherwise, it'll just feel, it could have been. It could have been. And so
they're so close, Joe. When you look at penalties again, there were then penalties of getting to a semi-final last year against Derry. You know, and they could have well bet Derry in a semi-final last year. They get that. So look at it, such fine margins, which we know at top level sport, such fine margins. But yeah, they'll be absolutely good at.
And interestingly, McGeaney was saying afterwards, they have practiced penalties plenty since the defeat last year. They were acutely aware that this is how games end now. The quality of the penalties was actually very high. There were good saves to very decent penalties, and then even you take the winning penalty and Conor Glass's penalty, this is roof of the net stuff. So it didn't strike you as 10 lads going, holy moly, haven't hit one of these since my younger years, let's see what happens. They look like two teams who practiced.
Oh, for sure. You'd have to assume everyone is doing it now, Joe, with what's coming down the line, especially. It's the most surprising thing about the penalties for me was Rian O'Neill's, you know, someone who you'd almost put your house on. I thought his was actually the poorest of the lot. I think he was first up for Armagh, and it almost set a pattern for them throughout the penalties. Got a bit of confidence up on Noran Lynch as well, and he'd be really disappointed, you know, with his one, I think. But yeah, overall, you'd have to say that the quality really good. I think certainly Conor Glasses and Kieran McFaul's one to win it as well were of particularly good quality.
To rub salt into the wounds when it's such a tight contest, the Brendan Rodgers goal from the Armagh point of view is an absolute shocker, and Ethan Rafferty's 2 points were phenomenal, and they're almost a bit like if Aidan O'Shea scores or Kieran Donaghy scores, they're almost worth 1.5 points in terms of morale. So two amazing scores, but to come off your line when the ball's dropping maybe 10-12 metres from goal, and then to hesitate halfway through, and then to back off. I mean, if you're coming, keep coming. And nobody got up with Rodgers. It's a great finish in some ways. Like, that's a difficult thing, a ball coming down to get a fist to it. Rodgers never took his eye off the ball. But in a game where there was only ever going to be a point or two maximum in it, Armagh never actually closed that gap. That in some ways, they were always chasing that until the very end.
Yeah, it was the critical score of the game, really, and obviously came at a stage where in the first 10 minutes of the game, Derry playing with the breeze, and that gave them a real platform, really, just to hold on for the rest of that half, playing against the breeze. And you know, when you're watching that back, especially live, you're just watching referee come, and you're just assuming, because you can tell it's dropping short, it's dropping well short, that he's going to stop. And eventually, by the time he does stop, it's too late, and he's way off his line. Armagh will probably look at, you know, Brendan Rodgers should have been blocked out as well. There's no way that he should have got a free run at that from where he was coming from as well. There should have been an Armagh player coming to meet him and stopping that run in as well. But such a mixed day for Rafferty. Like, as a goalkeeper, ever had a madder day in an Ulster final. 2 massive scores, 2 wides, at fault for the goal, saves a penalty, misses a penalty, like bizarre stuff.
It's changed since your day, hasn't it?
Oh, stop. Yeah, it's getting ridiculous now.
Extra time's going to haunt them as well. Armagh 1 point against 14 men in extra time. Yeah, that's another thing I think they'll look at today for sure. That 7 or 8 minute period, you know, it just had a couple of more opportunities that they couldn't take if they go in 3 up at half time. Granted, Joe, they still are 2 up with 3 to go. You know, they do get themselves actually into a really strong position in the second half of extra time that they just let slip and they just let go. And there was a big moment. The McGuigan free is a huge moment for me that levels it with about 2 minutes to go, because Rian O'Neill, that just lost his composure, just lost his discipline. He fouls McGuigan. It's about 10 or 15 metres out from the 45. It's not within kicking range, and he gets into a bit of a wrestling match or grapple with them, and David Goff brings it in, and it's within kicking range. And it's a super by McGuigan, but these are all the small things that add up, Joe. These are all the things they'll be looking at today and in the review during the week of how they let that game slip. No, I'm glad you mentioned that. That was a killer, because the kick was completely out of range. It was not on, and at that stage it would have been very difficult for Derry to find the time to build a score and a bit of wrestling. And I thought Goff was quick enough to move it forward as well. I think you'd be disappointed if you were O'Neill. You would have said, oh, come on, look, there's that bit of handbags after most fouls, no?
Yeah. Look, I suppose you can. If you're Derry, you're probably wondering, is the Stephen Campbell one a free as well? So maybe over the course of, I think Goff had a really good game yesterday, but I think both of them, I think you're right. Did O'Neill did a huge pile to get it moved in? I don't think he did, but yeah, maybe there was enough there. But I think the Stephen Campbell free the free in that levels it at the end. I think that's on the soft side as well, for sure.
You mentioned Campbell, and sorry, I didn't get the memo. We all call him Soupy now, do we? Is this just? He's still Stephen Campbell to me. I can't shake that yet.
If you're Ger Cannon and Marty Morrissey, maybe, yeah.
Okay, so Soupy it is. In fairness, he would run with the ball, and he took the game to Derry a bit more. And you did look at him and say a little bit more of that, because he was making inroads. You know, someone coming at you with a bit of pace and a bit of incisiveness goes a long way.
Yeah, it's an interesting one that they held him to come on. I thought he was one of Armagh's best players last year, to be honest. I thought he was superb. Had a brilliant league, so I don't know, was there an injury there or something, but his directness, the score he kicks off his left jaw, where he just comes through the middle, breaks a line, attacks that Derry defence and kicks it over his left foot. It's probably one of the best scores of the game, and it's something really Armagh were lacking an awful lot in the game. So yeah, I think they'll look back to see if he was there in the first half, and could he have brought that energy to the game in the first half when they had the breeze as well, you know. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but he's a really, really good player, Joe, yeah.
On the quality point, so I totally see where you're coming from with respect to Armagh maybe not taking the game enough to Derry, but I still thought within the game, the handling skills in the main, I saw them criticised a touch, maybe it was in the Sunday game last night. I still thought there was a high level of skill. Thought a lot of the kicking was good. You think of McGuigan's free to level it, which we've just mentioned. I mean, that's still a pressure kick, and he sails it over. And some of his passing, some of McGuigan's passing, foot passing, was a joy to behold. Rian O'Neill, a kick under pressure to take the game to penalties, delivers. And I have to say, when Derry were chasing the game and clock right against them, it's one thing keeping possession in the first 3 minutes of the game and working a score. They did not kick that ball in. Like, it was composure and possession, and we're going to work a score right at the death when they were behind. And that's like a lot of very impressive aspects here to the coaching that's going on.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so there were some really good aspects in that. I suppose when I look at the quality of it, if I'm looking at that game, would that game win an All-Ireland semi-final? Would that type of form? I don't think it would. Right. I think a Kerry or a Dublin or someone would look after Derry or Armagh playing that style of play and playing that quality that was played yesterday. Granted, I know it's an Ulster final, and when two teams like that play each other, it almost takes on a life of its own, and the way both teams set up and play against each other. But yeah, of course there was a really good aspects, and I think certainly from half-time on, things proved dramatically in that regards, and there were some super scores as you mentioned. But I think overall, I wouldn't say it was a hugely, quality or entertaining game in terms of quality.
And how would you see like a Kerry or a Dublin, for instance, taking care of business against Armagh or Derry, like pretty comfortably, and would dominate possession, or would score freely, or would be able to stop them from scoring? Like, where is the gap?
I don't think Kerry, if you look at Kerry and if you look at Dublin, one thing they're really good at is pushing up on opposition kickouts and trying to put you under pressure. So I think that's one spot straight away. There's no way they would have been letting Oran Lynch clip out short kickouts and Derry to hold the ball for 3 or 4 minutes. And I think that alone puts you under pressure, because it doesn't give you a platform to start easy attacks from the back. So I think that's one aspect. I think, so much more attacking threats from both Dublin and Kerry to look after them, maybe what both teams had to face yesterday. So I think there's a couple of things there that the bigger teams, I think, may be able to face or deal with a lot better later in the championship.
Yes, that's a great point. And Louth found out all about Dublin's press yesterday, which we'll come to in a second. So Derry with 70% possession in the first half, you put that very much at the door of Armagh, as opposed to Derry are so good in possession. Oh yeah, Joe. Like they were. I think it came up on the TV at one stage. The top 3 boys in possession after about 25, 30 minutes were Niall McCluster and Oran Lynch. Your goalkeeper and your cornerback. They had over 20 possessions each, because literally they're strolling out of fence with the ball. I don't know how many times Oran Lynch actually got the ball, and he could take solo standing up, and just hand passed across to someone else. So yeah, that's why I just couldn't understand why Armagh just weren't bringing a bit more chaos to it, and putting them under pressure, because Derry are so comfortable in that scenario. But you saw last year with Galway in the semi-final, especially with Dublin in the league final, when you don't allow them that time to build up slow attacks and you don't give them ample opportunities to do that, then they do, they can be got at. I think the evidence is there on that. Yeah, no, that's a great point. Would McGeeney have felt perhaps we mightn't be able to press them sufficiently and they'll beat the press and we'll be exposed for goals, and let's just keep this tight as a final? Is that what he's thinking?
Yeah, there is a bit of that in it, I suppose. And if you look at the way Derry ran through Monaghan in particular, maybe he looked at that and that kind of spooked him a small bit. But I think Armagh are a better team than Monaghan, or in a better place than Monaghan, and have more areas where they could have hurt Derry if they really attacked them and, shown a bit more. I suppose it's hard to say, but showed a bit more ambition.
Yeah, bravery
to go after the game. Bravery, yeah, rather than just stay in the game. In the game. I think if they went at Derry from the start, they could, like I said earlier on, with that breeze at the back, they could have been 4 or 5 up at half time.
And you think that's where the game is at now, with your point about Derry having legs to run through like they did against Monaghan, notwithstanding. The game for you at the real top level in Croke Park, when we get to the business end, it's pressure high up the pitch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When it comes to it later on down the line, you watch a Dublin, you watch a Kerry, you watch a Mayo if they're there, you watch how high they'll press up on opposition and put them under pressure. Don't let them build attacks. And I think that's what the likes of a Derry might come unstuck further down the line.
Okay. So I'm imagining the likes of Kerry and even Mayo and Dublin and Galway, like they're just waking up, they're having a stretch in bed, they're nice and relaxed, and the likes of Armagh and Derry are bloodied and battered, and they're coming in from a long workout. And Lord knows where Tyrone are. Of the Ulster counties, if your life depended on it in the morning in a big game at Croke Park, who are you sending out to take on Dublin or Kerry and save your life?
I'd probably say Tyrone, Joe. And I know Paul Flynn said something last night similar in the Sunday game. I think it's Tyrone. If you look at Derry against Dublin this year in the league final, that's pretty much how they're going to set up against Derry or against Dublin later on in the championship. And you saw how easy Dublin, 4 goals. Okay, granted it's 4-6, but I think Dublin will be a completely different team later on in the championship.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.